unlimited access to the spa from now on. How could John keep this a secret? It's just evil, unforgivable. Without my knowledge, my in-laws' place had transformed into a luxury hotel. Now, I can enjoy the spa every day and indulge in delicious meals. But kidding aside, the thought of them using my precious son for their own desires, it's outrageous. They better be ready. My name is Amy, a 35-year-old office worker in the administrative department of a pharmacy. I live with my husband John and our first-grade son Edward. John and I met through a colleague at work, and from the moment we met, we clicked. We quickly became close, started dating, and were married the following year. With my upbeat husband John and lively son Edward, I was leading a life of ordinary happiness. Another thing that makes me glad I married John is having his mother-in-law Renda in our lives. Having lost my mother early, I was raised by my father. My mother-in-law, who I barely knew as a mother figure, treated me like her own daughter since the start of our marriage. Amy, do you have any plans this Sunday? Why don't you and Edward come over for dinner? She would say, always treating us to delicious meals. When Edward was younger, she was a great support for my parenting struggles, even helping to pick him up from daycare when I couldn't leave work. Edward grew very attached to her, and spending Christmas at my in-laws had become a tradition for our family. Amy, your mother-in-law really is the best, isn't she? My colleague Emma would say, listening with an envious look. It was Emma who introduced me to John. They had been friends since college. Emma, with her bright personality and many friends, joined the company with me. We were close enough to share work frustrations, family matters, and personal issues. The pharmacists and other staff were kind, and the company had excellent benefits. Emma and other colleagues with children continued to work full-time as before our pregnancies. Recently, John's been saying he has to work on weekends and isn't home even on his days off, I said, sounding a bit discontented. Are you suspecting him of cheating? Emma laughed. That's laughable. But it was true. John had been away from home more often. Dad, are you working again today? Edward asked, wanting to play with John. I have to work, sorry, John said apologetically. I couldn't say anything back, feeling proud of John for working hard for our family. Little did I know back then that such dedication would turn into such a terrible betrayal. Rock, paper, scissors. Oh, the worst, I sighed. My workplace is usually closed on Sundays and holidays, but about once a month, we're on duty for the hospital gate on Sundays. Accordingly, our pharmacy also opens. It seems Christmas is our turn this time. We played rock, paper, scissors to decide who would work. Unfortunately, I lost. I wanted to spend Christmas at my in-laws, but no choice. I have to do my best, I muttered to myself, only to be chuckled at by the friend sitting next to me. It's not funny, I said to her. She laughed and apologized. Sorry. This woman is also an officer, and we met at the daycare. Her son Henry and Edward are very close, and our families have become friends. We used to go on trips together, though we've been too busy lately. Her husband Tom is also a kind and gentle person. Her name is Isabella. I call her Henry's mom, or Isabella. By the way, Isabella, thanks for playing with Edward in the park last Sunday when I had to work. When John had to take care of Edward on weekends, today I played with Henry in the park, Edward told me. When I asked John about it, he said he ran into Henry and his parents at the park by chance and played together. Really? I asked John, but his vague response frustrated me. By the way, mother-in-law called and said she's looking forward to Christmas. I can't make it, but have fun. I can't go because of work, so it looks like Christmas will be without me this year, I told Isabella. Mother-in-law sounded very disappointed when I told her I couldn't come, but maybe I'll put John to work and have him do a thorough house cleaning. It's been a while, she said, sounding quite excited about the idea. Feel free to use him as much as you like, I laughed as I talked with mother-in-law. It was close to Christmas when this happened. I was working a late shift that day and had to do some unexpected overtime. I hurriedly tried to contact John but couldn't reach him. I ended up calling my son's mobile phone. Mom, are you done with work? Edward answered the phone with a cheerful voice, happy to hear from me. Sorry, Edward, Mom is working late. Can you put Dad on the phone? But Edward said John wasn't there. Wondering where they could be, I said, Hello, Amy. It must be tough working so late. John called and said he's going to be late because of work, mother-in-law said. Hello, Amy. It must be tough working so late. John called and said he's going to be late because of work, mother-in-law said. She told me that while she was preparing dinner in her house. John called her. Sorry, Mom. Amy's on a late shift and I should get home early, but I have to work overtime. Please help. After saying that, John hung up and couldn't be reached again. I was furious with John's actions. He hadn't contacted me at all, thinking maybe he wouldn't get caught. I rushed home. John still hadn't returned, and at the dinner table were mother-in-law and Edward, eating. Mother-in-law said she was happy to have dinner alone with her grandson. Even though I apologize, I really respect mother-in-law. John came home late that night. Hey, about work, you promised to take care of things when I have a late shift. Can you at least keep that promise? I said quietly, what can I do? It's work, I muttered to myself. John raised his voice and even suggested that I quit my job or become a part-timer. When John met me, he praised me for working in healthcare, but that John who said such nice things is no longer here. Our current lifestyle is also thanks to my income. Even though I'm an equal partner to John, he's been doing less housework lately and hasn't been taking care of Edward either. And this guy, hey, you're not cheating, are you? I looked at John with cold eyes. There's no way. You're overthinking, Amy. He suddenly changed his tone and put his arm around my shoulder. That said it all. John has always tried to appease me like this when he's lying or feeling guilty. How dare he cheat? He better be prepared. I was glad Edward was asleep. I didn't want to show our son such an ugly fight. From then on, we acted normal in front of Edward, but when it was just the two of us, we hardly talked or even made eye contact. When I told my colleague Emma about what happened, she said, "That guy is the worst. Let me know if you need anything." That was a cool thing to say. Days passed, and before I knew it, it was Christmas Eve. Take good care of Edward, will you? Say hello to Renda for me, I said to John, but as usual, he didn't even meet my eyes. I'm off then, he replied indifferently, and John and Edward left for my in-laws' house. What's with that attitude? It's so annoying, I thought to myself. I spent a lonely Christmas Eve alone in our eerily quiet house. There was no contact from John, but thinking he was having a good time with mother-in-law gave me a little peace of mind. I remembered mother-in-law saying she'd make John clean the house. I wondered if he was being worn out by chores and couldn't help but feel a bit of schadenfreude. Little did I know John was doing something unthinkable at that time. Christmas Day was busy with quite a few patients. Fortunately, I didn't have to work overtime, so I left work and went straight home. I planned to join my in-laws the next afternoon and spend the holiday with mother-in-law. Might as well enjoy some alone time for a change. As I was thinking this, my mobile phone rang. It was mother-in-law. Thinking it was going to be a complaint about John being lazy, I answered. Amy, Merry Christmas. You must be tired from working on Christmas. You did great. Mother-in-law's voice sounded kind, not irritated at all. Merry Christmas, Renda. I wish I could have spent it with you too. Is Edward just playing games? When I asked, mother-in-law fell silent. Even after calling Renda's name a few times, there was no response. I wondered if it was a bad signal. Amy, John and Edward didn't come here this year. I spent Christmas alone, mother-in-law finally said, and then began to sob over the phone. I was in a panic. John and Edward definitely left the house yesterday. Where could they possibly be now? There was a long silence between mother-in-law and me. I'll head over to your place right now, I said. It's about a 40-minute drive to my in-laws. On the way, my mind was filled with thoughts of Edward. What if they were involved in an accident or some incident? These worries spun in my head. When I arrived at my in-laws, mother-in-law was already waiting outside. As soon as she got into my car, I asked quietly, "Should we call the police?" Mother-in-law slowly shook her head. As I wondered why, mother-in-law began to speak. "Amy, I'm really sorry about my stupid son. Do you think John is having an affair?" Mother-in-law looked at me with teary eyes, and I almost started crying too. What? Actually, that's when I remembered something and hurriedly drove to a certain place. When we reached our destination, I called Edward's mobile phone. "Hello? Is Dad nearby?" I asked. "Yeah, he's here. Come quickly, Mom," Edward answered immediately. Even though we have been apart for only a day, Edward's voice sounded dear to me. "What is it, Amy?" "I'm busy right now." I heard John's voice on the phone, sounding like he wanted to end the call. Immediately, hearing that voice made me feel intense loathing, wanting to confront him. "Renda, you said something about making him clean, right? So, are you at your parents' house now?" John's response on the phone was calm. "Yeah, That's right, Amy. I can't wait to see you. When did he become so adept at lying as easily as breathing? I thought to myself, should I have quit my job? Should I have tried harder at home? But none of that justifies an affair. Oh, Sorenda, you started a luxury hotel. Does that mean unlimited spa access? How could John keep this a secret? I won't forgive him, I said in a low tone filled with hatred. On the phone, John seemed quite flustered by my accusation. His silence prompted me to continue. Hey, come out of the room. This is the luxury hotel I always wanted to visit. You said it was too expensive, remember? As I spoke fluently, John seemed to give up. I'm sorry, he said in a barely audible voice. I found this place using the GPS on Edward's mobile phone. This hotel, not far from my in-laws, was the place I wanted to visit. The fact that John, who said it was too expensive for me, was enjoying himself here with his mistress infuriated me. Perhaps it showed on my face because on the way to the hotel, mother-in-law kept apologizing. It was then that I found out for the first time that when I worked late shifts, mother-in-law was almost always the one taking care of Edward. I hadn't noticed because she would return home before I got back. John, who was terrible at cooking, used to buy ready-made food, and if mother-in-law tried to cook, he stubbornly refused her. Looking back, that must have been his strategy to keep me from finding out. Even during that short time, John was so enthralled with his mistress. Mother-in-law initially believed John was really working, but as his absences increased, her suspicions of an affair naturally grew. The climax was when mother-in-law saw John walking arm in arm with an unknown woman, looking intimate. She debated whether to consult me but decided against it. The main reason was that she didn't want to lose the chance to see Amy and Edward. Mother-in-law sobbed in the passenger seat, knowing she cared so much for us. Tears streamed down my cheeks too. Mother-in-law was more considerate of me and Edward than John ever was. This time, John had contacted her, saying he would spend some rare time alone with Edward but asked her to cover for him, saying he'd be at her house. Mother-in-law, suspecting a lie, worried about Edward and contacted me. I despised John from the bottom of my heart for involving so many people, I thought bitterly. At the hotel, after explaining the situation, we were made to wait in the lobby. Then, a man and a woman with guilty expressions on their faces emerged, along with Mom. I was getting bored. I played a law with Henry, who was Edward's friend from daycare. Henry looked around and said, "Looks like my dad hasn't arrived yet." He seemed a bit disappointed. John's mistress was Isabella, another mom from the daycare. I wasn't sure how long the affair had been going on, but these two fools had boldly involved our children. Apparently, they had told their sons that their respective parents would join them later. How despicable. John had booked 2 rooms, one for the children and the other for themselves. So repulsive. Thanks to the hotel's kindness, mother-in-law and I were allowed to stay in a room for a while, where she looked after the children in the other room. Isabella having an affair with my husband and then talking to me normally at committee meetings was unbelievable. I spoke in a calm tone. What I thought Amy hadn't noticed anything. It was so funny. Isabella laughed. What is this woman? I never would have guessed that Isabella, who seemed so fragile and beautiful, was actually this spiteful. I stared at her quietly, pondering the unpredictability of people. John himself seemed a bit taken aback by Isabella's true nature. This woman, without being asked, happily began to talk about how and when she started her affair with John. Their relationship began when our children were in senior kindergarten. On a day I was sick and couldn't attend a parent meeting, so I asked John to go in my place. It was Isabella who made the first move. We had known each other as families and had each other's contact information. From that day on, they began to communicate more frequently. It started with complaints about their spouses but gradually turned into personal conversations. Soon, they began meeting more often, and it didn't take long for their relationship to become romantic. But now it's all over. What a pity, Isabella chuckled, her nonchalant attitude heard loud and clear. I said, "You seem quite relaxed for someone about to face serious consequences." Ignoring her surprised look, I stood up decisively, facing my bewildered husband. I said, "Come on, get up and check out. I've called a ride for you, so get ready quickly," I said with a slight smile as I left the room. Seeing Isabella's face twitch a bit from my remark felt oddly satisfying. Now begins the hellish drive. The trip isn't over until we're home, I thought to myself. After checking out, as we headed to the parking lot, Henry ran joyfully towards the person he was waiting for. Henry's dad, Tom, Isabella's husband. Sorry to keep you waiting, Henry. Have you been good? Tom said in his usual calm manner. Dad, can Edward and I go home first? Mom and you need to talk, Henry said gently, and the two boys happily got into my car. Thank you. We'll have a long talk on the way home, I said, glaring at Isabella. I had learned from contacting Tom that he was supposedly at work and Isabella had lied about visiting her parents far away to come here. Both of them were utterly despicable. I was forced to come here because John threatened to use Edward to ostracize Henry at school if I didn't. Isabella started with a shallow lie. Really? You seemed so eager to tell me everything just a while ago. I continued calmly. Isabella laughed. What is this woman? I thought, staring at her quietly, pondering the unpredictability of people. John himself seemed taken aback by Isabella's true nature. She happily began to talk about how and when she started her affair with John, and it was unbelievable to hear. Their relationship began when our children were in senior kindergarten. On a day I was sick and couldn't attend a parent meeting, so I asked John to go in my place. It was Isabella who made the first move. We had known each other as families and had each other's contact information. From that day on, they began to communicate more frequently. It started with complaints about their spouses but gradually turned into personal conversations. Soon, they began meeting more often, and it didn't take long for their relationship to become romantic. But now it's all over. What a pity, Isabella chuckled with a nonchalant attitude. I said, you seem quite relaxed for someone about to face serious consequences. I ignored her surprised look, standing up decisively, facing my bewildered husband. I placed the voice recorder with our earlier conversation in Tom's hand as Isabella desperately tried to grab it. Don't bother. I have another copy just for myself, I said, smiling as I got into my car. As I drove away, John's pathetic voice called out from behind, Wait, what am I supposed to do now? Go home alone. Oh, but I thought you might feel lonely, so I arranged a ride for you too. I pointed behind John. Behind him stood my colleague Emma and her husband, who was also a friend from college. Apparently, John owed him a big favor and couldn't stand up to him. I glanced over and saw they were already scolding him. Emma gave me a look that said, Leave it to me. Though my husband was a disappointment, I was lucky to have supportive people around me. As I expected, everyone's ride home was hellish. Isabella desperately denied her relationship with John in the car, but no one believed her with the voice recorder playing. Eventually, she admitted to having other affairs. I don't know if John was serious, but he was the one being played from the start. The reason Isabella targeted John was so petty because Edward got the lead role in a school play over Henry. I was furious. I planned to make him pay a hefty alimony. Henry's custody went to Tom, of course. He said he was going back to his parents' place, a bit far away. John came home late that night, looking like a ghost. It seems like he got a good scolding from Emma and her husband. John always said his college friends were very important to him, as if it were a mantra from the beginning of our marriage. Now, because of this incident, John probably won't be invited to their gatherings anymore. It's nothing but karma. He brought this upon himself. He should regret it. What angered me the most was that every time he met his mistress, John told Edward, Today it's a secret between us men, okay? Don't tell Mom. Edward kept that promise and never told me anything. When I found out, I was moved to tears. John and I successfully finalized our divorce. You stupid man, how can you face your late father now? Don't ever show your face again, mother-in-law said, slapping him. John finally realized the gravity of his actions and cried like a child. But my heart didn't waver. Afterward, John requested a transfer to a branch outside the prefecture. He paid the alimony and is keeping up with child support. As for me and Edward, we're living with mother-in-law at her place. I considered returning to my parents' home, but my father has remarried and has a new family. Living together would be impossible. Mother-in-law suggested we stay with her till our lives stabilize. People are often surprised by our unique relationship. But I still cherish mother-in-law like my real mother. I hesitated about what to call her, but I still call her Renda. We're keeping it a secret, but we plan to celebrate her 60th birthday at that hotel. I splurged and booked the most expensive room. This should turn the unpleasant memories into enjoyable ones. My job became far, and Edward had to transfer schools, but Tom's parents lived near our former in-laws, so the boys ended up in the same school again. That was a surprise. Once things settle down, I might rent an apartment near work. But for now, I want to cherish this time a little longer. Given that I'll be the primary inhabitant of our new abode, it only makes sense that the largest room becomes mine, she declared confidently. From that moment onward, she staked her claim on our new home with the assertiveness of a seasoned owner. Her brazen remarks ignited a storm of indignation within me. Pardon me, but I'm curious, where exactly would your room be if you're so insistent? I countered, unable to contain my irritation. Upon hearing my retort, my sister-in-law flushed crimson and launched towards me. I'm Sophia, a 32-year-old corporate professional. George, my husband, and I have been inseparable since high school, celebrating 7 years of marriage. Perhaps owing to our extensive shared history, our relationship resembles that of an old married couple more than most couples our age. Nevertheless, I can't fathom being with anyone but George. I've always had a great rapport with my in-laws, and presently we find ourselves cohabiting for various reasons. With my father-in-law on the brink of retirement and my mother-in-law juggling part-time work, we share household responsibilities and contribute to the financial upkeep of the household. Things were cruising along smoothly until an unexpected visitor disrupted the tranquility. One lazy Sunday, as we savored the serenity of the weekend, the jeering sound of a truck reversing shattered the peace. Curiosity piqued, we exchanged puzzled glances. Did anyone order something? As she barged in with an entourage of movers, my heart sank. My room's on the right, second floor, she declared, oblivious to our surprise. Oh, and I seem to have misplaced the key. Could someone let me in? A chill ran down my spine at the unmistakable voice. As we approached the front door, there stood Charlotte, my long-absent sister-in-law, flanked by movers lugging cardboard boxes. Wait a moment, Charlotte. What's the meaning of this sudden appearance without so much as a heads-up? And who are these people with you? I questioned, a mix of surprise and irritation coloring my tone. Charlotte seemed genuinely perplexed by our reaction. What do you mean? I quit my job and found myself jobless, so I'm moving back home. Since it's my parents' house, I didn't think it necessary to inform you guys beforehand. Heh, she explained with a carefree shrug. We stood there dumbfounded, while the movers behind her exchanged uncertain glances. Never mind them, just get on with moving my stuff in, Charlotte instructed nonchalantly, striding confidently into our home and up the stairs. Ha, my old room's been turned into a storage space. Get this stuff out of here. Her sharp voice echoed from the second floor, leaving us bewildered. What do we do now? I turned to my husband and in-laws, their expressions mirroring my own frustration. Let's hear her out first and then figure out a plan to get her to leave. Given her stubborn nature, she won't budge if we simply ask her to, my father-in-law suggested wearily, his demeanor suddenly aged. Reluctantly, we piled Charlotte's belongings in the hallway, buying time as we deliberated our next steps. Charlotte's petulant expression was all too familiar, her sulking demeanor grating on my nerves. Oh, and why are George and his wife here? Are you guys crashing with mom and dad because you're broke or something? She jabbed, her words a sharp reminder of her tactlessness. Charlotte's derisive snort dredged up a flood of unpleasant memories. She was 2 years my junior, yet my disdain for her stretched back to her high school days. Our shared alma mater was the source of our initial acquaintance. I vividly recalled Charlotte's audacious approach during our student years. You're George's girlfriend, right? Well, since I'm your sister-in-law, why not lend me some money? She had brazenly demanded. From that very first encounter, she had shown a blatant disregard for boundaries, addressing me disrespectfully despite my seniority. Her audacity didn't stop at her presumptuous request. She even had the nerve to casually ask her own older brother for money. My response was immediate and firm. Absolutely not. Though she bore the title of my boyfriend's sister, I refused to indulge her entitled behavior. Charlotte's reaction to my refusal was predictably disdainful. Geez, you're so stingy, she retorted, her words dripping with disdain. Damn, she shot me a disdainful glance before striding away. You're the crazy one here. That encounter marked my unsettling introduction to my sister-in-law, Charlotte. As it turned out, her behavior towards her own family was even more troubling, a fact my in-laws had been grappling with for quite some time. Her tumultuous history in school was a constant source of concern, prompting frequent summons for her beleaguered parents. Even after graduating, Charlotte remained adrift, her days characterized by idleness and mischief. At our wedding, her antics reached a new low. Her excessive drinking led to a state of inebriation, during which she shamelessly flirted with any man who caught her eye. And as if that weren't enough, she took it upon herself to critique my bridal attire with a pointed, mocking remark. "That dress doesn't suit you one bit," she jeered, followed by a burst of laughter. It was a moment I'd sooner forget. Following her disruptive behavior that day, Charlotte's relationship with her own family deteriorated to the brink of estrangement. Her departure, fueled by anger, left a bitter aftertaste, yet to everyone's astonishment, she resurfaced years later as though nothing had transpired, leaving our family utterly bewildered. "It's because our lease at the old apartment was up. But our new house isn't ready yet, so Dad graciously let us stay here," George clarified, casting a fond glance at Charlotte. "You're building a house, George." "Impressive," Charlotte remarked, her tone laced with sarcasm. "When George and Sophia's new house is ready, we'll be moving out too, Charlotte," my mother-in-law stated icily. "How can you be so heartless toward a daughter who's just endured a breakup and is jobless? Is that how you define motherhood?" "Moving into George's new house signifies a fresh start for us," my father-in-law added, his voice tinged with resolve. "You've always favored George over me," Charlotte shot back at her parents, her footsteps heavy as she stormed up the stairs and out of sight. According to Charlotte, she had experienced a breakup, lost her way, and found herself returning home in search of solace. Since that day, Charlotte's presence shattered the tranquility of our family life. Our lifestyles clashed on multiple fronts. Her late-night, boisterous phone conversations with friends often sparked heated arguments between her and George. Despite shirking any household responsibilities, Charlotte never hesitated to voice her culinary preferences. "Fish? I hate them. Too many pesky bones. Can't you whip up some meatloaf instead?" she'd interject. Fed up with her intrusion, I finally confronted Charlotte. "If you crave meatloaf, kindly prepare it yourself or perhaps contribute to the household expenses. How does that sound?" Charlotte's perpetual attitude towards me only exacerbated the tension. My disdain for her ran deep, so I maintained a formal demeanor whenever interacting with her, a subtle reminder that I wasn't one of her casual acquaintances. Yet she persisted in addressing me only as "Hey" or "George's wife." In response, I resolved to reciprocate by addressing her solely as "Hey." Fully aware of her aversion to fish, I confronted her about her lack of contribution to household expenses. "Why should I chip in for my own living expenses? You're nothing but a leech, surviving off George's earnings and my family's support. Don't act so entitled." Charlotte's audacity left me speechless. "Seriously, is that how you perceive it? And how's the job search and apartment hunt going?" "Our new home is nearly ready," I countered. Her face flushed momentarily before she retorted with a smug grin. "Don't worry, I've got it all figured out," her tone dripping with self-satisfaction. In the midst of our heated exchange, my mother-in-law, Susan, appeared visibly concerned. "Sophia, dear, I'm truly sorry if Charlotte is causing you distress. Are you all right?" she inquired, her worry evident in her voice. Dealing with Charlotte had taken its toll on everyone, her stubbornness making it nearly impossible to reason with her. "I'm all right, Susan, but you should take a break too. It seems like Charlotte has gotten the wrong end of the stick." "Is everything all right?" I asked, concern evident in my voice. Susan's response was a heavy sigh. "Even her father and I can't get through to her. She just barricades herself in her room and tells us to stop badgering her. I sometimes wonder if she'd emerge if we set off a bug bomb," Susan quipped, eliciting a chuckle from me. After days of anticipation, our dream home was finally complete. George and I had poured our hearts and souls into saving for the down payment, and now, the kitchen bore my personal touch, while the bathroom had been transformed into a haven for my husband's love of long baths. It truly was our dream abode. As we immersed ourselves in the joy of unpacking and settling in, the doorbell interrupted our reverie. Expecting George's parents, I glanced at the monitor to find Charlotte tagging along. "I really don't want her invading our new space," I muttered, unable to suppress a grimace. Charlotte swaggered into our freshly minted abode, her demeanor oozing with arrogance. "George really outdid himself. This place is quite spacious. Nothing beats a brand new home," she proclaimed boldly. She proceeded to fling open doors to various rooms without so much as a "by your leave." My irritation reached its peak, and I was on the verge of giving her a piece of my mind when George's father intervened. "Hey, that's impolite," he scolded her sternly. Unfazed, Charlotte pouted and retorted, "What's the big deal? This is going to be my place now, isn't it?" George wasted no time in shutting down her presumptuousness. Cut the nonsense. You don't have a room here, do you? He snapped. But Charlotte persisted, undeterred by George's firm tone. If my parents are moving in here, then technically, this becomes their house, right? So I do have a right to be here, she argued brazenly. We stood there, dumbfounded by her audacity. It became painfully clear that Charlotte had been eyeing our home as her own from the very beginning. Furthermore, she boldly asserted, since I'll be the one spending the most time at home, the largest room here belongs to me. Charlotte's audacious declaration triggered something within me. Your room? I echoed incredulously. Let's see, shall we? With a calm demeanor, I gestured towards the storage shed outside, typically reserved for garden tools. Even if I were to go out of my way, the only space I could possibly arrange for you would be that old shed. And naturally, you'd still be expected to pay rent. Frankly, I'd rather not have you in our new home at all. Could you please leave? Charlotte's face flushed crimson upon hearing my words. Are you serious? She exclaimed, making a move toward me. Fortunately, my husband George intervened swiftly. That's enough, Charlotte, he interjected firmly. Stop causing unnecessary trouble. In stark contrast to his sister's tumultuous nature, George remained composed and level-headed. The only one he'd ever raise his voice against is this woman, Charlotte, who never seems to have any respect for her older brother, George retorted firmly. As our father-in-law's authoritative voice boomed down, even Charlotte fell silent. Charlotte, cut the theatrics and listen up. We're not moving in here, and you need to come to terms with the fact that our old home is gone, George asserted. I couldn't help but stifle a chuckle as I glanced at Charlotte, whose expression resembled that of a startled deer caught in headlights. From the outset, Charlotte seemed to assume that George and I, along with her parents, would continue living together in our new abode. However, that wasn't the case. We had been informed some time ago that our parents were planning to sell the family home and relocate to the countryside. The reason was plain and simple. We're just tired of dealing with Charlotte's antics all the time. We want to enjoy our retirement in peace, our mother-in-law had expressed her frustration. Charlotte had stormed out of their old home, declaring, I never want to set foot in this house again. I don't consider you guys as parents to me. Just disappear already. Living with Charlotte had taken a heavy toll on my in-laws. Her volatile temperament had led to numerous conflicts, some of which even resulted in legal disputes. Despite her reckless behavior, Charlotte remained unrepentant, leaving her parents to foot the bill for settlements. To cover these expenses, our mother-in-law had taken up part-time work, the financial burden imposed by Charlotte weighing heavily on the family. George and I had done our best to support them, striving to maintain some semblance of peace in our lives amidst the chaos. However, Charlotte, seemingly oblivious to the havoc she had wreaked, showed no gratitude towards her parents. Instead, she only sought their assistance when it suited her own needs. My frustration with her behavior had reached its breaking point. Then I'll just move into your new house with you guys, or I'll end up on the streets, Charlotte finally admitted, a hint of panic evident in her voice as she confronted the truth. Enough, Charlotte. The answer is a resounding no. We've tried to reason with you countless times, but you've refused to listen. Did you honestly believe we overlook everything simply because we're your parents? We're not immune to hurt, Charlotte. We have emotions too. And let's not forget your own words. You guys are no parents of mine. Just disappear already. Our mother-in-law's tone was icy as she addressed Charlotte, whose expression betrayed a mix of shock and realization. Observing Charlotte's crumbling facade, George and I exchanged a knowing glance. Dad, Charlotte's return wasn't prompted by heartbreak or job loss. Sophia and I are fully aware of the truth, George asserted, causing Charlotte to visibly pale. In reality, Charlotte was involved with a married colleague, he continued. She knew about his marital status but chose to continue the affair nonetheless. And when his wife discovered the truth, the affair imploded. Both Charlotte and her lover lost their jobs due to the scandal. They're divorced now, and coincidentally, your lover's wife, who happens to be my friend, crossed paths with me recently. Seeing her after such a long time, I was taken aback by how much weight she had lost. Enjoy your role as a homewrecker. I couldn't help but lash out. You know there's a special place in hell for people like you. Tears threatened to spill as I grappled with the weight of the situation. My husband and I had discussed it, but we hadn't broached the topic with my in-laws yet. We were afraid of upsetting them. No, it's not like that. I fell in love with him, and I couldn't help it. Charlotte defended herself with the same tired excuses that cheaters often use, her gaze chillingly indifferent. Glancing at my in-laws, I could see the fury in their eyes. Without a word, they swiftly escorted Charlotte back to their home. Later, my in-laws informed me that my sister-in-law had resorted to doing household chores in a desperate attempt to gain their approval for moving into their new home. However, their sentiments remained unchanged. "Pack your things and leave," my father-in-law repeated like a broken record. "Why?" "I've been working hard around the house. I've been doing laundry and vacuuming. What more do you want?" Charlotte finally erupted. "There's nothing special about what you're doing. It's basic self-care. Did you expect to be praised for that? You're an adult," my mother-in-law retorted sharply. My sister-in-law blushed, adding a layer of embarrassment to her already wounded pride. "I already made my will. All inheritance will go to George. There isn't much left because of you. You've been written out of the will. It's likely to be approved by the court," my father-in-law declared, leaving my sister-in-law visibly stunned. As my in-law's moving day approached, coinciding with my father-in-law's retirement, my sister-in-law had drastically downsized her possessions to just one suitcase. According to my mother-in-law, she had sold off most of her belongings for cash. As we bid farewell to my in-laws and turned to head back to her car, my sister-in-law inexplicably followed us. "What's the matter?" I asked, puzzled by her presence. "I have nowhere else to go," she admitted, her voice breaking. "Please, I want to live in your house too. I'll take the small room." But more than her plea, it was the term "sis" that sent shivers down my spine. I glanced at George, and it was clear he shared my sentiments. "Hell no. Live with us. Not in your wildest dreams," he retorted bluntly as we made our way to the car and drove off without a second thought. A few days later, while enjoying a quiet day at home, the doorbell interrupted our peace. Seeing the figure on the other side, we both let out a resigned sigh. "Stop bothering us. Do you want us to call the cops?" I warned as I opened the door, only to find my sister-in-law standing there, her desperation evident as she knelt before me. "Please let me stay. I've been bouncing between hotel rooms and odd jobs, but I can't keep living like this," she pleaded. My husband and I were taken aback by the depths of her self-imposed predicament. "I don't care. We're not family anymore," I asserted, attempting to close the door. However, she clung to it stubbornly. "Just give me some money. I've maxed out my credit cards, assuming my parents would bail me out again. And I have alimony to pay, you know. If your friend is really friends with my lover's wife, maybe she could help negotiate a lower payment for me," she implored. We had no desire to engage with her, but her audacious selfishness pushed me over the edge. "Don't push me. I've never encountered someone as despicable as you. Stay away from me. I never want to see your face again," I snapped. Despite her insistence, she refused to leave. Suddenly, her face drained of color as she noticed our dogs barking from inside the house. "Wait, you have a dog?" she questioned, taken aback. We had adopted one of the 3 puppies from my parents' dog. "Would you like to see it?" I offered. Her reaction was immediate. "Who? What? No way. I can't stand dogs. You must be insane to live with one. Count me out of this house," she stormed off, her anger palpable. To be honest, my sister-in-law harbors a deep aversion to dogs. According to George, a childhood incident where a large dog playfully chased her left her traumatized, instilling a lasting fear and dislike for dogs. "Thanks for scaring off that lady, Maron," I murmured, giving our toy poodle a gentle pat. Since then, we haven't crossed paths with my sister-in-law. However, a friend mentioned spotting her in worn-out attire in a distant town. Her current circumstances don't concern me. Frankly, I hope she faces some hardships. George and I are relishing the tranquility of our new home. His parents seem to be thoroughly enjoying their rural lifestyle, occasionally reaching out through video calls and visits. They've managed to keep their address concealed from my sister-in-law, preventing any unwelcome surprises. Both appear healthier and happier, as if a weight has been lifted off their shoulders. A few months after settling into our new abode, we received a wonderful blessing. A baby is on the way. I had heard that stress could impact fertility, which may have been a factor in our previous struggles to conceive. Now, we eagerly anticipate the arrival of our newest family member next year. Gazing at George, his joy evident, I gently caressed my growing bump, filled with hope that he'll remain by my side through all our future endeavors. "Mary, it's me," he said, his voice a ghost from the past. It had been a decade since my ex-husband and our son's wife vanished into thin air after eloping. I'd buried thoughts of them deep within, avoiding the pain they left behind. But now, unexpectedly, his voice pierced through the years. I'm going to move into your parents' place. You're still there, aren't you? His demand was as startling as it was unwelcome. I'm sorry for the abruptness, but you need to vacate my home, he insisted, leaving no room for negotiation. His request caught me off guard. A decade had passed since we last exchanged words, and his sudden reappearance left me bewildered. What could he possibly want now, after all this time? And why was he asking to move into my parents' home with his unfaithful partner? Still bunking with the folks, huh? Any new spouses since we last talked? His inquiry dripped with a mix of curiosity and condescension. Get out of there pronto. Anger surged within me for the first time in a decade, fueled by his audacity to mock me further. Little did he know, my living arrangements had changed drastically over the years. Sorry, but if you're eyeing my parents' place, you're out of luck, I retorted. Huh? His confusion was palpable, a stark contrast to the rage boiling within me. I made it clear to him that after a decade, my determination had only grown stronger. Mary Kane, 60 years old, and still teaching part-time at a private school, I asserted. Despite being at retirement age, I persisted with my part-time work, albeit with a reduced salary. My admiration for my parents, both esteemed educators, stemmed from cherished memories of my childhood. Their influence fueled my ambition to follow in their footsteps. There was a time when I had a husband, Stephen, but that chapter ended in divorce a decade ago, and now, out of the blue, he resurfaced after all these years of estrangement. Stephen and I first crossed paths in college, back when I was just 21, juggling part-time teaching at a tutoring center with my studies in education. Stephen, a fresh face at the tutoring center, had recently stepped into the role of a part-time teacher. Despite his seniority in years, it fell upon me with my longer tenure to mentor him as directed by the center's director. As I guided him through the ropes, our camaraderie blossomed into a close friendship, which eventually bloomed into something more. 3 years of courtship later, we exchanged vows and welcomed our son Michael into the world. With graduation came a full-time teaching position for me, prompting my departure from the tutoring center. Our journey together as a family was just unfolding, filled with promises of a bright future. 25 years flew by, witnessing Michael find love in Sarah, whom he'd met during his studies at a design school in New York. We rejoiced in their union, hopeful for the happiness they would build together as a couple. Then, unexpectedly, Michael returned home, burdened with something he needed to share. Mom, you're still married to Dad, right? His question, though seemingly innocuous, stirred a mix of emotions within me as I welcomed him back, the worry beginning to settle in. I spotted Dad strolling through Brooklyn with Sarah, Michael disclosed. Okay, I replied, my mind racing with disbelief. According to Michael, he caught sight of Sarah and Dad arm in arm last Friday night in Brooklyn's bustling hotel district. Suspicion gripped him, prompting him to tail them discreetly. His surveillance led him to witness them disappear into a hotel. I couldn't wrap my head around it. Despite being in-laws, Stephen and Sarah shared a bond akin to that of a father and daughter. The notion of them meeting privately, let alone in a hotel, seemed unfathomable. I clung to the hope that it was a misunderstanding or a nightmare, but Michael's evidence shattered that illusion. The image on Michael's phone screen depicted a crystal-clear snapshot of Dad and Sarah entering the hotel arm in arm, unmistakably captured on a Friday night. Dad's excuse of overtime at the office crumbled in the face of this damning proof. Additionally, I couldn't shake off the memory of Stephen's frequent late arrivals home over the past few months. His explanations vary from happy hour gatherings with colleagues to sudden business trips or urgent work demands on holidays. Initially, I accepted his excuses without much skepticism, but upon closer reflection, I realized these occurrences had become more frequent lately. There seemed to be a pattern emerging, one that made me increasingly uneasy. Could these excuses be a cover for spending more time with Sarah? Requesting Michael to forward the image, I assured him I would confront his father before bidding him good night. Anticipation gnawed at me as I awaited Stephen's return home that evening. When he finally arrived, the scent of alcohol clung to him, aggravating my nerves. Summoning my courage, I approached him directly. Stephen, Michael mentioned something today. Did you meet Sarah last Friday? Yeah, he stammered, his response lacking conviction. We did cross paths briefly. We chatted a bit, I think. His sudden alertness and the shift in his gaze didn't escape my notice. Sensing my apprehension, he countered with a question of his own. What exactly did he tell you? He mentioned spotting you and Sarah entering a hotel in Brooklyn. I disclosed, my voice tinged with concern. As I spoke, I held up the picture Michael had given me. Stephen's reaction was immediate. His eyes widened, and he seemed to choke on his words, his gaze darting around as if seeking an escape. Finally, with a heavy sigh, he seemed to resign himself to the truth. I can't believe Michael caught us, he muttered, his tone a mixture of surprise and resignation. I let myself get carried away. It's unforgivable. My heart sank as his admission sank in. No way, Stephen, I whispered, struggling to comprehend the betrayal. Realizing there was no use in denying it any longer, Stephen began to spill everything. He confessed to starting a relationship with Sarah 6 months prior, swayed by her advances and feelings that now eclipsed those for me. My mind reeled at the revelation. Had their affair begun around the time Michael and Sarah celebrated their 3rd anniversary? Despite my trembling shock, Stephen pressed on with his confession. I want to marry Sarah, Mary. I'm filing for divorce, he declared, his words like a dagger to my already shattered heart. I objected vehemently, my mind spinning with disbelief, but Stephen remained resolute. I can't continue like this. It's over between us. The following day, Stephen failed to return home. His absence was accompanied by a notable absence of his belongings and a finalized divorce decree left on the table. Later, a distraught call from Michael revealed that Sarah had disappeared, taking the divorce papers with her. It seemed she had no intention of coming back. The shock of Stephen and Sarah's sudden elopement left me reeling. That marked the end of my marriage to Stephen a decade ago. After the divorce, we sold our shared home, and I found solace in a new residence closer to my workplace. Initially, the loneliness of my new surroundings weighed heavily on me. Yet, as I immersed myself in my work, I gradually discovered that time had mended my emotional wounds. Teaching proved to be a powerful balm for my emotional wounds, a fact I only realized with hindsight. The steadfast dedication to my fulfilling career played a pivotal role in my healing journey. Continuing to work part-time at the school even after retirement, I found purpose and joy in the daily interactions with both colleagues and students. With each passing day, the weight of Stephen and Sarah's betrayal diminished, replaced by the gratification of nurturing young minds. 10 years on, thoughts of Stephen faded into the background of my life. While my income saw a decline after transitioning to part-time teaching, it remained sufficient for me to stay engaged with the school and the students who held me in high regard. Their affection and admiration filled a void akin to that of a parent. Additionally, I found solace in Michael's resilience, witnessing him throw himself into his work with renewed vigor, having overcome the initial shock of his father's and wife's betrayal. Any semblance of peace I had managed to find shattered with the shrill ring of the phone. Hello, Mary, it's Stephen. His voice pierced the silence, breaking a 10-year hiatus. I never anticipated hearing his voice again, and when I did, a surge of emotions overwhelmed me. What's the purpose of this call? You didn't reach out to reminisce about the past, did you? My words tumbled out with more force than I intended, fueled by years of pent-up resentment. After all, it was Stephen who had insisted on the divorce, leaving me to pick up the pieces. Stephen, ever composed and seemingly indifferent, countered, "Come on now, what's the point of this? Why did you even bother contacting me? You're the reason we're no longer together. I've moved on, Mary. You're not my husband anymore, and I have no interest in seeing you or hearing your voice. Let's cut to the chase, Mary. You're back at your parents', right?" His casual interruption grated on my already frayed nerves, prompting me to raise my voice once more, struggling to contain the surge of emotions stirred by his insensitive and light-hearted tone. Stephen pressed on, oblivious to my turmoil. "Sarah's expecting," he announced, the news hitting me like a freight train. "But raising a child is proving more financially challenging than we anticipated. Making ends meet has become increasingly difficult." According to his account, despite the significant age gap of 30 years, he and Sarah had shared a passionate bond. However, the dynamics shifted when Sarah fell pregnant last year, upending their lives. Both Stephen and Sarah had quit their jobs ahead of the due date, only to find themselves struggling to secure new employment. Forced to scrape by with part-time work, they faced mounting financial strain. With Sarah unable to work following the birth, their precarious financial situation loomed large. I reached out to Michael and my parents for help, But they all refuse. Stephen chuckled over the phone, his words carrying the bitter edge. Stubborn lot, aren't they? His laughter echoed in my mind, conjuring images of Stephen's stern father, determined mother, and sullen younger brother, faces I hadn't seen since their wedding 13 years ago. His family, a portrait of strictness, resolve, and seriousness, had cut ties with me after the divorce. Yet, despite our estrangement, I never imagined Stephen as the type to tolerate infidelity or betrayal within his own family. So, what? You expect me to stay in our old house? I said yes, but first prioritize your relationship with your wife. Your eldest daughter and first grandchild should take precedence over a mere teacher. Leave now. His abusive tone ignited a fierce anger within me. Had my memories of Stephen over the past decade been too idealized? I hadn't anticipated this callousness from him. Then a realization dawned on me. In a subdued voice, I uttered, "I'm sorry, but if you're referring to my parents' house, it's no longer ours." "What do you mean?" Stephen's confusion mirrored my own until I clarified. "Both my parents passed away, Dad 3 years ago, Mom just last year. Their house became too much for me to manage alone, so I sold it. I don't have a house to offer you, Stephen." "Ha. I won't disclose my current address, and even if I did, you're not welcome here. Don't ever show up." Stephen's voice boomed with authority. "What about my inheritance? When your parents pass, should the family home and money come to me?" I frowned, angered by Stephen's cold calculations regarding my parents' demise. It was evident he had his eyes set on not only my funds but also my parents' estate. Despite his mention of familial ties, it was too late for any semblance of trust. I had already received my rightful share from my parents' estate, including their house. My parents had made it clear they wouldn't leave a single cent to a man who shamelessly eloped with their daughter-in-law a decade ago. On the day of our divorce, they were incensed upon learning of Stephen and Sarah's betrayal from Michael and me. Their fury was justified. They had treated Stephen like their own son, only to be repaid with the gravest betrayal. Before their passing, my parents took proactive steps to secure their estate, drafting a will to ensure everything, including our family home, would pass on to me in the event of Sarah's return. 7 years after my father's demise, my mother followed, leaving me the sole inheritor of our family's estate. While reluctant to part with the cherished memories embedded in our home, I honored my parents' wishes and decided to sell it. They hoped it would shelter someone more deserving than Stephen and Sarah. Stephen's reaction was explosive upon learning of this decision. "Don't play dumb. You can't. This is absurd. They wouldn't approve." The inheritance was legally passed down to me, I countered firmly, and their forgiveness isn't something I seek, especially not from Stephen and Sarah, who've done nothing but cause turmoil. Stephen, who had idled away his days, had no business meddling in my affairs. As I gazed at my disconnected phone, I realized Stephen's true colors. Someone who would abandon others for his own gain, then lash out when denied. It was a revelation that my ex-husband, with whom I'd shared years of my life, could be so immature. As contempt simmered in my heart, another call came through, this time from Sarah. "You didn't bother to inform me about my own in-laws passing," she accused, her voice dripping with accusation. But her words failed to move me. If Sarah had truly been shocked by my parents' deaths, she would have expressed condolences or a desire to pay her respects. Instead, she immediately steered the conversation towards inheritance, legacy, and money, revealing her true priorities. Neither Sarah nor Stephen deserved a place before my parents' altar. With that thought in mind, I cut Sarah off before she could finish speaking. Later, I received a call from Michael. "Mom, did Dad and Sarah show up at your place?" he inquired. "No, they didn't, but they called, asking about the house and their inheritance," I replied. Michael's voice carried a hint of resignation. "I see. I thought they might reach out, especially after they visited me the other day." "Michael, are you okay? Did they cause any trouble?" I asked, concerned. "I'm fine, Mom, really. They just made a scene at my door. When I threatened to call the police, they took off. But I have an idea." Michael revealed his plan to me, prompting a decision to break the cycle of toxicity between Stephen and Sarah, not just for my own sake, but to safeguard my son as he embarked on a fresh chapter. A few days after putting this plan into action, I received a frantic call from Stephen. "Mary, did you have a hand in this? You're unusually quiet," he blurted out. "Don't play innocent. What's going on?" I demanded. "They're on their way to our place," Stephen disclosed. "They? Who?" I pressed for clarification. Stephen explained that 7 women were en route to their apartment, his unfaithful partners. It appeared he'd been carrying on affairs with 7 other women, in addition to Sarah. Unaware of Stephen's infidelities with 7 other women, Sarah found herself caught off guard by the sudden chaos. As the women erupted in anger, Stephen's frustration grew, directed now at Sarah. The revelation of multiple affairs left me dumbfounded. I knew it was you. How did you uncover my secret? Stephen demanded. I wonder, I retorted, considering I have nothing left after my ex-husband abandoned me for another woman 10 years ago. What? Stephen's shock was palpable. Turning the conversation around, Stephen unleashed a torrent of expletives over the phone, but his outburst failed to faze me in the slightest. As Sarah's distress escalated during our conversation, she hastily packed her belongings, unleashing a heated argument with Stephen, oblivious to my presence on the line. It was a chaotic scene unfolding before my ears, reminding me of the saying, things spiral out of control. With a heavy heart, I directed my final words to my ex-husband, though they may have fallen on deaf ears. Farewell, Stephen. Never darken my doorstep or our son's life again. With that, I ended the call. Little did Stephen know, the tumult sparked by the women he had been unfaithful with was the very plan Michael had alluded to. After Stephen and Sarah's tumultuous visit to Michael's home, where they were swiftly turned away, he wasted no time in enlisting the services of a professional detective agency to delve deeper into their affairs. As it turned out, Stephen's infidelity with Sarah had escalated into affairs with 7 other women, 3 of whom were married. Michael promptly relayed this information to me, along with Stephen and Sarah's current address, the very apartment uncovered by the detective agency. With this knowledge in hand, Michael and I coordinated a plan. We informed all 7 women of Stephen and Sarah's whereabouts and directed them to confront the couple simultaneously. The resulting chaos at Stephen and Sarah's apartment grew so intense that law enforcement had to intervene, dispatching police to the scene. Sarah ended her relationship with Stephen, and he found himself facing lawsuits from 3 aggrieved husbands, each demanding alimony payments exceeding 3 figures. Losing Sarah, his home, and his financial stability, Stephen now lives as a homeless individual in a park, struggling to make ends meet. A colleague spotted him seeking assistance at a soup kitchen. Meanwhile, Sarah, facing her own financial burdens, was hit with alimony demands surpassing 3 figures. Forced to borrow money to cover her expenses, she turned to a black market lender, a decision that would soon prove ominous. Shortly after securing the loan, she was forcibly abducted by intimidating individuals in a car, and her whereabouts remain unknown. 10 years have passed, and I've finally reached a final resolution with Stephen. Once again, I've returned to the tranquility of my life. While I remain single, contentment fills me as I immerse myself in the vibrant atmosphere of school. That alone is sufficient for me. In time, Michael found love with a woman who has a child of her own. They are now dating with the intention of marriage. My heart swells with hope that Michael, too, will discover a newfound joy and purpose in life. Hi, I'm Heather, and I'm 23 years old. A couple of years ago, I got married to the person I adore. Despite my husband being French, our relationship was smooth sailing except for the language difference. To bridge the gap and connect better with him and his family, I took up learning French without them knowing. It was my way of showing how much I cared for them. My husband, Frederick, and his mom, Avril, had no clue about my secret language lessons. I not only learned French but also became quite good at it through hard work and practice. I reached a point where I felt confident enough that I could survive in France if I had to. You might wonder why my husband doesn't know about my skills. Truthfully, I was a bit shy. Speaking someone's native language can be intimidating, especially when you're always around them. But I finally decided it was time to overcome my shyness. I stopped speaking French with both my husband and my mother-in-law because the whole point was to improve communication, right? It turned out to be fortunate that I hadn't started speaking French with them yet, because one day I overheard a conversation that led to some unexpected events. Hi, Mom. How are you today? Thanks for inviting me over on this beautiful Sunday afternoon. It's our pleasure, dear. Hello, Mom. Hello, my dear. How are you? Thanks for having me. Don't mention it. You're always welcome here. I brought some croissants and what do you Americans call them? Bagels. Yes, bagels and croissants for our afternoon tea. How thoughtful. Thank you. Please, come and sit, Mom. The food will be ready soon. Did she cook? No, I did most of the prep work. Don't worry. I was relieved to hear that, though I couldn't help but wonder what she meant by it. However, I was too shy to ask. It was odd because Avril usually enjoyed my cooking. I figured maybe she just wanted her son's cooking that day, something familiar. Then, I overheard her saying, I can't stand her cooking. Why did you even invite me over? We should have gone to a cafe to avoid her. Mom, remember we agreed to speak English so Heather doesn't feel left out? Oh, I'm sorry, dear. I was just saying the food looks delicious. I was surprised to find out that it was my husband who cooked. I wish it was your cooking. I always love your food. This left me baffled. How could she say those mean things in French and then lie to me in English? I started to doubt my translation, but I had a plan to confirm my suspicions. Don't worry, you can speak French if you prefer. It's your language after all. I'll be okay. I decided to use the Google Translate app to record her conversation to ensure I understood correctly. At this point, I doubted my translation skills. As we all sat down to eat, what I heard next shocked me. I want to discuss our plan. The time is nearing. It's practically tomorrow, Frederick. You need to be serious. The app, along with my understanding of French, confirmed that there was indeed a plan being discussed. But Mom, not now. I said I'll handle it. Heather, my dear, what are you going to tell her? Could you pass me the sugar, please? She doesn't know anything about the plan. I was just going to tell her I'll be out of town. Out of town? Why? I was utterly confused by what was happening. Despite my confusion, I stayed composed, not revealing that I could hear their conversation, so I could strategize my next move. Yes, Mom, I understand. I'll take care of it. I know how crucial this is. It's incredibly important. If your great-uncle doesn't see us tomorrow, he might give the house to someone else, like your cousin or aunt. We can't let that happen. No one should know about this house. Oh, Mom, you have such a sense of humor. Don't worry, I was just speaking English so Heather wouldn't suspect anything. Heather? Suspect what? Oh, sorry, dear. I was just asking who made this delightful tea. It's wonderful. That would be your talented son. I'm not as skilled as he is in these matters. Oh, darling, your cooking is fantastic. Terribly fantastic, Mom. She might catch on. No, she won't. She's too clueless to understand us. I'm not so sure, Mom. She probably understands some basics, I think. Let's test it, Heather. How much French do you know? At that moment, I realized I had to play dumb and pretend I didn't understand anything, allowing them to reveal more of their intentions and true nature. I'm still pretty terrible at French. I only know basic phrases like bonjour and comment tout appels. Oh, that won't do, dear. You should learn more French. Yes, ma'am. I'll work on it. Well, at least it's convenient for Frederick and me so we can gossip about you. I'm just joking, my dear. We would never do that to you. Isn't that what we're doing now? Yes, and that's what makes it even funnier. They laughed while I continued recording the conversation with Google Translate. As I did, I also checked various apps, websites, and forums to verify the accuracy of what they were saying. After cross-referencing, I found about 90% confirmation, confirming my initial suspicions. Now that I realized they didn't have much regard for me and were openly mocking me, I knew I had to gather more information. Their insults were like slow cuts, but what I heard next shook me to my core. As I was saying, this house is crucial. No one else can know about it. Understand? We stand to make a lot of money if we keep this to ourselves. I'm relieved we didn't tell my wife about this. I don't want to share the profits with her. Me neither. Everything has to go smoothly. Your great-uncle Pierre made it clear that whoever contacts him first inherits the mansion. We need to get there before anyone else and start renovating. I can't wait to have a house in California. It'll be my escape from my wife and life in Florida. Sometimes I can't stand her. You're still young. You shouldn't be tied down to someone like her at your age. Come live with me in California. Enjoy your youth with women and parties. When you're ready to settle down, you can. Let's leave this place behind. Actually, Mom, I think you're onto something. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Tears welled up in my eyes. Excuse me, is everything all right? Yes, I just need to grab something from the kitchen. I left the room before hearing anything more. I needed a moment to compose myself and avoid causing a scene. How could they say such cruel things with me right there? It was beyond shameful. I was distraught, pacing back and forth in the kitchen. Suddenly, an idea struck me. When I noticed my mother-in-law's purse on the counter, I decided to peek inside and take her phone. Luckily, it was unlocked. I opened her WhatsApp and sent Uncle Pierre's number to mine. Quickly, I deleted the message from her phone, leaving no trace. It was as if instinct guided my actions. I didn't fully understand why I did it, but I felt a sense of empowerment, plotting to retaliate against them for their hurtful words. I re-entered the dining room, where the conversation about their scheme continued. So tomorrow we start our trip. It's well-deserved after all the hard work lately. I agree. We could use a break. Everything all right? Yes, dear. We were just discussing the lovely weather and how perfect it is for a relaxing getaway. Would you like to join? Maybe not today, Freddie. All right. When then? Perhaps tomorrow. I observed closely as both Avril and Frederick tensed slightly, a reaction I anticipated, given what I knew of their plans. Tomorrow might not work. I asked Freddie to assist with some tasks around the house. What tasks? Why so many questions? Just rearranging things. I can lend a hand too if needed. Not necessary. Do you see how nosy she's being? It's irritating. This is why you need to leave. Don't worry, Mom. I've got it under control. Despite knowing their true thoughts, I maintained a smile, finding solace in the anticipation of the revenge I would soon enact. I continued recording their conversations until the very end, determined to extract every detail. While my French had improved significantly, I still double-checked to ensure accuracy. That night, I stealthily slipped away from the bedroom to the office for further investigation. As I replayed the audio, any doubts about my understanding vanished. From this ordeal, I gleaned that they planned to vacation tomorrow to claim a house from Great Uncle Pierre, and they harbored resentment towards me, even plotting to leave me. As I paced in the kitchen, leaving my recording phone behind, I inadvertently captured more valuable information. Avril sought Frederick's computer password to alter flight details. I struck gold, obtaining both password and flight information. I had hit the jackpot. I accessed Fred's computer and found the flight details on the website where he booked the tickets. Feeling both sneaky and devious, I may or may not have altered the flight details, postponing their departure to the day after tomorrow. This marked just the beginning of my plans. There was much more to come. With Great Uncle Pierre's number safely sent to myself, I was prepared to take action. Hello, Uncle Pierre, it's Heather. Oh, hello, dear. How are you? Is everything all right? Well, no, not really. I recounted the day's events in detail, even sending him the audio recording as proof. Without it, I doubted he would believe me. We ended the call so he could listen to the recordings, reconvening once he had finished reviewing everything. I'm at a loss for words. How could Avril and Frederick do this? They were such sweet and innocent people when they were younger. How could they betray you? Me? It's a lot to process. I was just as shocked. You've certainly improved your French. Well done. Thank you, Pierre. But now that we know, what should we do? Well, they won't be getting the house, that's for sure. After hearing all this, I can't in good conscience give such a gift to people planning to destroy it with their greed and foolishness. Understood. It's your house, and you have every right to decide its fate. Absolutely. I'll be ignoring their calls from now on. Let's see how they like that. Thank you for bringing this to my attention. You're a good person, Heather. Don't let the darkness of this world change that. Thank you for your time and courage in sharing this with me. It couldn't have been easy. I admire your strength. Take care of yourself. Uncle Pierre, you too. Good night. With that, I felt assured that Avril and Frederick's downfall was imminent. Now that all the pieces were in place, I only needed to wait for the opportune moment to set things in motion. Returning to the bedroom, I found Frederick still sound asleep. It saddened me to think that my beloved husband could treat me this way. If only we had talked things through, perhaps we could have found a solution. Instead, he chose a path of deceit. I took his phone and disabled his alarm. Without it, he would sleep indefinitely, and that's precisely what happened. I gathered my belongings and decided to spend the night at a hotel. I couldn't bear to stay in the same house with someone like Frederick. The next day was pure chaos. I'm certain Frederick woke up to a barrage of missed calls from his mother, scrambling to pack since he foolishly hadn't done so the day before, and rushing to get to the airport. I received a call from him around 2 p.m. Where are you? Why didn't my alarm go off, and why aren't you here? I decided to take a day off for myself. That's nice. A heads up would have been appreciated though. Likewise, Freddie. What do you mean? Anyway, it doesn't matter. I'm running late for my flight, my meeting with Mom. Why are you in such a hurry? She wouldn't mind if you were a bit late. You don't understand. Anyway, it's fine. I won't be home tonight or tomorrow night. I have things to take care of. See you later. Before I could respond, he hung up. He was probably too overwhelmed to realize that I had changed his flight details to the next day. Using the Find My iPhone app, I saw him heading to the airport. Imagine rushing out of the house, barely making it to the airport in time, only to discover that your flight had been canceled. I'm sure he was frantic, rushing around the airport. Suddenly, I received a call from Avril. What have you done? What do you mean, Avril? I know you changed our flight. If you mean I changed the date, then yes, I did. Why? I thought I was helping. You mentioned needing Freddie's help with something today. When I saw the flight booked for today, I figured I'd adjust it. You're welcome, Frederick. Come talk to your wife before I reach through the phone and throttle her. Heather, stop whatever you're doing. Uncle Pierre still isn't answering. Try again. He's not answering because he doesn't want to talk to you too. You understand us? Every word? But how? I warned you, Mom. I said she might understand. So you heard everything yesterday? Yes. Here's what's happening. I'm divorcing your useless son and leaving you too. Have a nice day. Oh, and next time you want to gossip about someone in their presence, make sure they don't understand. Goodbye. I ended the call before they could respond. I had enough of their drama. Later that day, Uncle Pierre called. Hello, dear. How are you holding up? I'm a bit shaken. I just had a terrible argument with Fred and Avril, and now I'm divorcing Fred. I'm sorry things turned out this way, Heather. It's part of life, I suppose. How are you feeling? Well, I finally confronted them, and they're not happy about it. What'd you say? I told Fred he's foolish for mistreating you, and I called Avril out for involving her son in her schemes. And I told them I'd given you the house. You did what? Yes, dear, the mansion is yours. Even if you divorce Fred, it's yours to share with whoever you choose. I'm speechless. It's overwhelming. I wanted the house to go to someone kind, resilient, and compassionate. That's you. It's the least I could do after all they put you through. Take it. And just like that, not only did I rid myself of two toxic individuals who didn't truly care about me, but I also acquired a multi-million-dollar mansion. Watching me gain the house they coveted so much drove Avril and Frederick into a frenzy. They bombarded me with death threats daily, but I simply replied with pictures of different parts of the house. A subtle reminder that it belonged to me, not them. Revenge had never felt so satisfyingly luxurious.
I understood what was happening as I watched my sister's in-laws' house from far away. When I realized the truth, I was shocked. I wondered about the intentions of my sister's husband and his family towards her all this time. How many times had they tricked my sister with a straight face? It was unforgivable. No matter what, I was determined to make them pay. My name is Sally, and I'm 45 years old. When I tried to wear my funeral clothes again after a long time, I couldn't zip up the dress around my stomach. At first, I thought my body hadn't changed much, but it was obvious I'd gained some belly fat. The last time I wore this dress was when I was 30. My sister Jane, who had a weak heart since she was young, sadly passed away at 27 due to worsening pneumonia that led to heart failure. It's strange that I was the only one who spoke with Jane before she passed away. I happened to visit her in the hospital that day. Jane probably had many plans since she was only in her second year of marriage. She likely never thought she'd leave this world so soon. When I remember her smile as she talked about wanting to stroll under the autumn leaves after leaving the hospital, it breaks my heart. On the day of Jane's funeral, when I couldn't come to terms with her tragic death, something happened. Just before the ceremony started, I went to the restroom. There I saw Jane's husband Bob talking on the phone in the nearby lounge. Yeah, once the funeral is done and Christmas rolls around, things should settle down a bit. Yeah, you're right. No, we should keep a low profile until the memorial mass about a year later. I don't usually listen in on people's phone calls, but this time I couldn't help but be curious about what they were saying. What does he mean by keep a low profile until the memorial mass about a year later? The deceased, he must mean Jane, right? The way Bob is talking, it doesn't sound like he's talking to a colleague. All of Jane's family is here at the ceremony. Who could he be talking to? Sorry for keeping you waiting. Yeah, I get it. No, the kid's fine. They don't suspect a thing. Neither my wife nor anyone in her family has noticed I have a child. Just stay home and relax. What? I was shocked. Did he just say he has a child? For the record, Jane and Bob didn't have any children. They decided not to because it was uncertain if Jane's body could handle childbirth. They were both in their first marriages, and we never heard anything about Bob having a child. What's happening? Honestly, Bob's strange conversation left me confused and overwhelmed with thoughts. But suddenly, I remembered the words Jane desperately tried to tell me just before she went into surgery. There's a child at home. After Jane lost consciousness and passed away a few days later without waking up, I never got to hear the rest of what she wanted to say. I was the only one who heard those words. The shock of losing Jane was so huge that I didn't have time to think about what she meant. But when I connected Jane's words about home with what Bob said about stay at home in their old house, which Sally wouldn't call their parents' house, just home. But there were no children in our family home either. After a bit of thinking, it hit me all of a sudden. Could it be that the child Bob was talking about on the phone is living at Bob's parents' house? When that idea came to mind, I couldn't sit still. If that were true, I don't think I could forgive Bob. After paying my respects at Jane's memorial service, I was eager to test my theory. I left the funeral home right away and went straight to Bob's parents' house. It's within walking distance from Jane and Bob's place. Bob is an only child, and his parents are getting older, so they decided to live close by. Jane had worries about living so close to her in-laws, wondering if she could get along with them better. But in reality, they hardly ever went back there and had very little family interaction. Maybe that's why even at Jane's funeral, Bob's parents didn't seem too upset about what happened. Instead, they seemed more interested in playing with their phones, which I found kind of strange. Well, I guess this is what happens when the relationship with in-laws is so distant. At least they could pretend to be more sympathetic at a time like this. Remembering how Bob's parents behaved, I finally reached Bob's parents' house. I hesitated to ring the doorbell. Everyone should be at Jane's funeral, so there shouldn't be anyone home. But what if someone did answer the door? What would I say? I still didn't have any proof of Bob's wrongdoing, and I wasn't confident about confronting someone without evidence. As I thought about this, I went around to the back of the house and peeked inside through a window that wasn't closed. I could see the whole room. Could someone really be in there? Just as my heart skipped a beat. Hey, stop moving. Look, stay still. Yeah. A child ran out into the yard, followed by a woman I didn't recognize. I instinctively hid and watched them from the shadows. The child looked a lot like Bob, with wobbly steps indicating he'd just started walking a few months ago. The woman seemed to be around Bob's age, and her eyes resembled the child's, making me certain she was the mother. Oh God, did Bob really cheat on my sister? When did this betrayal start? When did Jane find out? Even though my suspicions seemed to fit together perfectly, I had so many questions and didn't feel any better. Instead, tears started to well up. I'll never forgive him. I promised myself to make him pay for what he did to my sister. Later, I went back to the funeral home and attended Jane's burial in the churchyard. Even though everyone thought I left halfway through, when I explained that I couldn't handle the shock of losing Jane, they seemed to understand. I highly doubt anyone would suspect I went to Bob's house, but I was relieved that my sister's in-laws didn't seem to notice anything strange at all. The next day, I made up my mind to ask for a private investigation on Bob from the only detective agency in town. To my surprise, it was run by Jane's friend Layla, whom I remembered from the funeral. Layla told me that Jane had also asked for an investigation on her husband. After she requested the investigation, Jane got sick and passed away. Even though I have to keep things confidential, I think Jane would have wanted you to know, Layla said. With that, Layla shared the details and findings of the investigation Jane had requested. Once, even though they were engaged, Jane and Bob almost broke up. Bob got cold feet just 6 months before their wedding, saying he wasn't sure he could protect Jane, who had a weak heart, and he wanted some space. After a lot of thinking, Jane agreed and decided to distance herself from Bob. However, about 2 months later, Bob apologized and said he wanted to marry Jane after all, so they patched things up and went ahead with the wedding. After that, Bob worked really hard, even on his days off, because he wanted to buy Jane a house in the future. Jane talked about their relationship like everything was fine, like she was proud of it, so I thought they were okay. But I was wrong, Layla explained. In reality, right after getting engaged to Jane, Bob started having an affair with his childhood friend Nancy. They had dated before but broke up over a small disagreement. Even though Bob met Jane and got engaged, he still had feelings for Nancy. When Nancy reached out to him, those old feelings came back. To make matters worse, Bob's excuse about getting cold feet was a lie. Around the same time, Nancy got pregnant, and Bob was torn about whether to leave Jane and marry her. He even talked about it with some friends, but Nancy was firm in her decision. "If you stay with me, I won't ask you to marry me. But I'm going to have this baby," Nancy told Bob. Bob didn't want to break up with Nancy, but he also didn't want to tell his wife Jane about the baby. At the same time, he couldn't ignore a child he might have with someone he cared about. He didn't want Nancy to have the baby, but she was determined to keep it. Eventually, Bob opened up to his parents about the situation, only for them to say, "This will be our first grandchild, so let her have the baby." Bob's parents had always preferred Nancy as his partner since they knew her well from childhood. Plus, they didn't seem to like Jane much because she was frail and might not give them a grandchild, which they often complained about to others. Fortunately, Jane is frail, and she won't last long. Once she's gone, acknowledge the child and marry Nancy, Bob's parents proposed, and Nancy agreed. Though it was a twisted plan, it appealed to Bob. If his parents say so, then it must be okay, he thought. So it was decided that Nancy would have the child. Nancy, like Bob, was an only child, and her parents had already passed away. That's why Bob's parents spent a lot of time at Nancy's house, helping her during her pregnancy. The story about Bob working hard for Jane right after their wedding was a lie. He was probably visiting his newborn baby during that time. There were witnesses who saw Bob going to Nancy's house often, Layla explained. This suggests that the excuse of moving closer to their elderly parents was also a lie. They actually wanted to be near the child. As the child grew up, they respected Bob's parents' wish to spend more time with their grandchild, so Nancy and the child stayed more often at their house. With various excuses, they kept Jane away from her in-laws, and eventually, they stopped going home altogether. "It's enraging how they're endorsing infidelity as a family," Layla concluded. "Just a month ago, my sister found out about Bob's cheating. She was feeling sick and left work early, probably not realizing that Jane was home. Bob, who hardly ever texted or called when Jane was around, came home earlier than usual that day and apparently made a call somewhere. 'I got off work early. Can I come over now?' 'My wife? She's at work. I don't think she'll find out. She seems to be getting sick a lot lately and might go to sleep early. If I say I'm working late, I think I can stay longer with you,' Bob said. 'Yeah, I also want to live with Nancy and the kids soon. Every time she says she's not feeling well, I think she won't last much longer,' replied the other person. 'Yay, I'm looking forward to it every time.' Just imagining how Jane felt hearing that from her sickbed makes my heart ache. This incident made Jane aware of Bob's cheating, and she seemed to have hired a private investigator who happened to be her friend Layla. The investigation revealed everything, and just as Jane was about to confront Bob with a divorce, she collapsed and passed away. As Layla finished telling me all this, she lowered her gaze and said, "Jane must have been heartbroken. I couldn't agree more. I wanted to avenge Jane's pain. I couldn't bear the thought of Bob and his parents enjoying having a grandchild while Bob planned to remarry. But I've only just learned all this, and I don't know what to do." After thinking for a while, I had an idea. "Layla, are you good with computers?" At my words, Layla smiled and said, "I got this." The next day, I went to my sister's in-law's house. When I rang the doorbell, my sister's mother-in-law appeared on the monitor, looking surprised to see me. "Oh, Sally, what's going on?" she asked, sounding a bit anxious. "I need to talk to the family about Jane's things. Can we talk for a moment?" Hearing my request, my sister's mother-in-law fell silent, and the intercom went quiet. Oh no. Maybe she won't let me in. Feeling nervous, I waited for a while. And then Bob appeared, saying, "I'm sorry, Sally. The room was messy, so I had to tidy up a bit. Please come in." "Oh, Bob, you're here. Perfect timing," I said with a smile. Bob's expression stiffened. He probably thinks I haven't figured out his cheating yet. His face stiffened, likely because he's hiding something. In fact, I had just seen his mistress and their child through the window. I bet he was cleaning up after them. "I wonder which room they're in." Bob and my sisters-in-laws seemed uneasy as they watched me enter the room. As soon as I took a sip of the tea they served me, Bob asked, "What's this about Jane's belongings?" Yeah. It's about this," I said, laying out a photograph on the table. Bob and his parents froze as they looked at the photo. "Bob, who is this woman?" I asked. "I don't know her," Bob replied hastily. In the photo, Bob and a woman were in bed together. The other day, this was sent to our house. It said that Bob is having an affair, I explained. Hearing this, his parents glared at Bob, and Bob shook his head frantically. "Wait, I don't remember this photo," he shouted. Ignoring his protests, I laid out more photographs. Each one showed Bob and the same woman kissing or on a date at a nearby amusement park. "People who cheat don't usually admit to their memory lapses, do they?" I said, feeling the tension rise. "I'm used to it," my sister's mother-in-law sharply retorted. "What are you implying, young lady?" "No. Mom, you've got it all wrong." "I don't know anything about this," Bob protested. "Then what's this picture about?" Even though you have a child with Nancy, I immediately responded to my sister's mother-in-law's words. My sister's father-in-law looked guilty and said, "Oh, you mean this child? And is this woman Nancy?" I asked, showing a photograph of Bob holding the child. What? The entire in-law family was speechless, and even though Bob kept denying the accusation, my sister's mother-in-law slapped him, calling him a worthless son. "Do you have other children too?" she demanded. "Please listen to me, Mom, Dad," Bob pleaded. But my sister's in-laws ignored Bob's pleas, scolding him for betraying their beloved grandchild. "What nonsense bringing this here?" "The picture was sent to her house." "I don't know much about it either," Bob exclaimed. "I came here seeking clarity, but it seems Bob does have a child," I said, preparing for a confrontation. Bob was at a loss for words. But honestly, Bob was telling the truth. He doesn't have any other affair besides Nancy. I didn't plan to reveal this, as I didn't want to be accused of spreading false information later on. However, this picture is fake. It's a composite one that I had Layla create. I could have used a real picture of the child with the actual person Bob cheated with, but I chose a combined photo because of certain reasons. I planned to confront him by asking him about the child, but luckily, my sister's mother-in-law revealed the truth earlier than I expected. "So, your quietness means it's true, isn't it? Earlier your mom also mentioned something about a child and Nancy," I said while my sisters-in-law stayed still where they were. "The note that came with the picture said these kids are being looked after in this house." "That's not true." My sister's mother-in-law quickly disagreed with what I said. "Are you sure?" "Of course, it's not true." "Then show me all the rooms." "Huh?" Without waiting for their approval, I stood up from my seat and headed towards the room next door. "Hey, wait a minute. You can't just snoop around other people's houses." Bob raised his voice. "If there's nothing to hide, then you should show me." "That's not the point." "Then what's the issue?" "Well." Without waiting for Bob's response, I ignored the attempts of my sisters-in-laws to stop me and peeked into the next room. "She's not here," I concluded, and then I went upstairs to the second floor. Despite facing obstacles and scraping my knee, it was nothing compared to my sister's pain. I was willing to endure any number of fresh wounds. Pushing past my sisters-in-laws, I opened the door to the room on the second floor, pushing Bob aside as I did so. "Ah, there she is." In the room, Nancy and a child were sitting on the bed. "Well, who do we have here?" It was a different woman and child from the ones in the picture. "What's happening?" Bob asked. At my words, Bob turned pale, and Nancy looked puzzled, saying, "A picture?" "Yes, it seems like Bob here has been cheating while my sister was around. Look at this picture." As I showed the fake photo to Nancy, her face twisted in anger, and she crumpled the picture. "What is this? You were with another woman." "No, Nancy, it's not like that. Just listen." Nancy was furious, and Bob looked pale. Having gotten the proof I needed, I'd added, "So you were indeed involved with Bob, huh?" My sisters-in-laws were stunned, unable to believe what was happening. "Why? You told me I was the only one. You said we didn't have to get married, and I wanted to have a child and be with you. And now this." "Nancy, there must be some mistake. Maybe it's a look-alike or Photoshop." "What do you mean, maybe?" You can't deny it completely. I can't trust you anymore. For a moment, I was surprised by the mention of Photoshop, but since Bob was too flustered to deny it properly, Nancy's suspicions were at their peak. A man who's so unsure of himself, you'd be better off not trusting him. He ruined my sister's life, I said, offering my serious advice. Nancy's face hardened. My sister went through a lot because of him, but she probably understands that already. I don't need to say anything, I thought to myself. Now, I need to act like I'm on Nancy's side and get her to listen to me to achieve my goal of not letting any of Bob's family or Nancy be happy. I understand, Nancy muttered. Wait, Nancy, I'm serious about you, I interrupted Bob's desperate attempt to win Nancy over. So you weren't serious about my sister, but you told her you were, even made marriage vows to her. Looks like you really are an untrustworthy man, Bob, I said. At my words, Nancy's face darkened. With a fake photo and everything, she seemed to start doubting whether Bob's words were sincere. Good. If you were serious, you wouldn't be cheating from the beginning. No matter what, you should stick to one person, I emphasized. As I stressed my point, Nancy's expression grew even darker. Bob's face turned ghostly pale. He must have sensed the growing distance in Nancy's feelings. We should break up, Bob. I don't want to be your backup option. After seeing that photo, I can't trust you anymore. I could handle being the other woman, but I can't stand the thought of being the third one, Nancy declared, tears flowing down her cheeks. Bob instinctively reached for her hand and pleaded, Please, just listen to me. But Nancy pulled away, stating firmly, I don't need you to acknowledge the child anymore. Just leave me alone. As Nancy left the house with her child, Bob's entire family was saddened by the loss of both the child and the planned second wife. Meanwhile, I felt a sense of victory inside. Later, I had Bob write a legal document officially ending his ties with our family, cutting off all connections. Additionally, he agreed to relinquish any rights he had to the inheritance left by my sister. My father, who is usually quite stern, heard everything from me and stormed into my sister's in-laws' home. They were shocked by his sudden appearance and seemed to agree to renounce any claim to the inheritance, wanting to sever ties with our family completely. Well, even though we call it my sister's inheritance, it wasn't much. But it's a relief that not a single cent of her assets went to him, I thought. On the day I brought the photos to Bob's house, it seems one of the windows was open. As a result, our argument and conversation could be heard clearly outside, along with revelations from Nancy's friend who lived nearby. Everything that happened in Bob's house was exposed to the entire neighborhood. As a result, rumors spread that Bob's house was cursed, and he decided to quit his job and leave town with his parents. Meanwhile, Nancy unexpectedly showed up at our family home after about 2 months. She came bearing $50,000 as a gesture of apology and gratitude for helping her see the truth. She wanted to make amends for how she had treated my sister. While I appreciated Nancy's intentions, money couldn't erase the pain my sister had endured. It didn't feel right for us to forgive someone for something they themselves couldn't forgive just because they offered money. We understood Nancy's gratitude, but we couldn't accept money from someone who had done such a shameful thing, so I declined to accept the money. Instead, we suggested that it be donated to a nearby children's home where my sister used to work. Do you doubt whether such a woman would actually follow through with the donation? Of course not. I went with her to ensure the donation was made properly, so you can trust that it happened. If the money is used for that purpose, I believe my sister would be happy. I hope the children who have their whole lives ahead of them can find happiness, even on behalf of my sister. As for myself, it's hard to admit, but I struggled with the loss of my sister for a while, even experiencing mental health challenges. There was a time when it was so tough that I had to leave my job. But I've been gradually recovering, and now I work at Layla's detective agency. Leela and I became very close after that incident. I think it's because we were both comrades who had lost something important in such a tragic way. We found common ground. Although I didn't have a positive view of marriage because of what happened to my sister after being with my partner for 4 years, we got married last year. The experience of losing my sister during the COVID-19 pandemic made me realize that I never know when I might lose the chance to be with my loved ones. So I decided to get married. I want to cherish every moment with those I care about, without any regrets. Just watch me, Jane. I promise to live a long, fulfilling life for both of us. When I join you someday, we'll have a blast together, I declared, determined to live life to the fullest.
I'm Logan. I'm 19 years old and I'm studying to be a doctor. I'm from Texas, but now I live in New York City for college. My parents are in Dallas, where my dad works as a surgeon at a university hospital, and my mom stays home. After high school, I moved to New York and I've been on my own for about 4 months now, since July. My dad's work inspired me to study hard and get into medical school. But since coming here, I haven't had the typical college experience I hoped for. I've been focused on my studies, which is important, but I also wanted to hang out with friends and join clubs. Unfortunately, money has been tight, so I couldn't do those things. My parents pay my tuition, but I have to pay for everything else like rent and living expenses. To make ends meet, I've been doing different jobs like tutoring, working at events, and even at a bar. But it's been tough. I often have to switch between shifts at different jobs just to get by each month. Weekends are when I try to earn the most money. I never really had a day off. It was tough both mentally and physically. I get sleepy during class, and when I come home late at night, I'm too tired to study. I'm worried I might fail my classes and have to repeat the year if things keep going like this. Studying should be my top priority, but I'm struggling to focus. I felt anxious and desperate, so I called my mom for some financial help, even if it was just a little. My dad is hardly ever home because he's busy with his job, so my mom handles the finances. I thought they could help because my dad earns well, but my mom said they couldn't afford to send extra money. Many of my friends get financial help from their parents, and I wished I had that too. Despite all this, I kept working hard at my jobs. The midterms came, but I hadn't studied enough, and as I expected, I had to retake some exams. After finishing the retests in early August, my summer vacation began. I'm planning to work a lot during this long break to earn as much money as possible. Once summer is over, I'll focus more on my studies. That means cutting down on work hours, which should help my finances. To save money, I've been eating cheap foods like instant noodles, bread, and discounted meals. I also use my bike instead of paying for transportation. Growing up, I never had to worry about money, so this new life of financial struggle is unexpected and tough. Despite all this, I stay in touch with college friends through texts. Seeing their fun photos makes me realize how different our lives are, even though we go to the same university. My friends often invited me out, but I had to reluctantly decline because I didn't have the money or the time. Let's go somewhere that doesn't cost anything, I suggested. One of our classmates messaged me, "Are you sure you're okay? You always seem tired at school, and I think you're working too much." My friend was concerned about me. I've got the physical stamina, and I need to earn my living expenses. Let's meet up once school starts again, I replied. After that, I went to work at the bar as usual, but something happened shortly after. I collapsed during my shift. It was a busy Friday with lots of customers, and as I was carrying drinks, I suddenly felt dizzy. I don't remember much after that, but when I came to, I found myself in the hospital. According to the doctor, I collapsed due to exhaustion and malnutrition. I received treatment and was allowed to go home the same day. I immediately called my boss at the bar to apologize. My boss explained that after I collapsed, he had called my name, but I was too out of it to respond, so he called an ambulance. He had also contacted my parents. "You've been taking on a lot of shifts, and I relied too much on that. I'm sorry about that. I want you to rest easy for the rest of the month," my boss said. This meant a cut in my income. As I rode the subway home from the hospital, I wondered if I should take on more tutoring jobs. I found myself at a loss. I was supposed to work at the bar the next day, but that suddenly turned into a day off. I decided to quietly stay in bed today. While checking my phone, I noticed a message from my friend that I had missed while I was unconscious. I replied and explained why my response was delayed. Upon learning about my situation, my friend decided to come over. He bought groceries at the supermarket and made spaghetti for me. While eating the meal he had kindly prepared, our conversation turned to the topic of living expenses for someone living alone. When I mentioned that I wasn't receiving any financial support from home, my friend was surprised. "That's why you've been working so hard. Your dad's a doctor. You should be getting some support." "No," I explained. "I asked Mom, and she said they're barely managing with just my tuition." "But you're an only child, right? Maybe if you ask, they could send a little support," my friend suggested. My mom said even a small amount of support was out of the question. "No way, that doesn't make sense. I hate to say this, but maybe your dad is sick and can't work," my friend speculated. Thinking it over, I said, "My dad is a doctor and used to drive a luxury car. Our house is in an upscale neighborhood, and I went to private schools my whole life. So why would mom suddenly say they have no money? Suddenly worried, I immediately messaged my mom. Are you both okay? She replied after a while. We're fine, but I couldn't relax, thinking maybe they were just saying that to keep me from worrying. Since I had planned to go home for the holidays, I decided to talk to my parents about this. After thanking my friend, he said, I'll be waiting for some souvenirs. I felt grateful to have such a friend. The holiday season came and I took the cheapest flight I could find back home. I could only stay for a night and a day because of my job, but I was looking forward to it. When I arrived, my parents greeted me at the door. My dad seemed surprised when he saw me. You've lost a lot of weight. Really? I hadn't noticed myself, but apparently I looked quite different. My mom was also taken aback and fell silent. For lunch, my mom had prepared things like salad, soup, and chicken wings, and for the first time in a long while, the three of us sat down to eat together. As soon as we sat down, my dad looked worried and asked, You look thinner. Are you eating properly? I told him the truth. Not really. It's been a while since I had such a luxurious meal. What do you usually eat? Cafeteria food? My dad asked. Nah, the cafeteria is too expensive for me. Is it that expensive? It's about $5 or so. My dad looked puzzled. Is the money I've been sending enough for you? Confused, I responded. Huh? I haven't been getting any money. I finally told my dad. What do you mean? So you mean to tell me you haven't received any money for the past 4 months? He asked, shocked. I haven't received any, I replied. Have you really been sending money? I had asked your mom to transfer $2,000 every month into your account, Dad said, surprised. Really? I was surprised. Mom told me that your finances were tight and that she couldn't afford to send any money. I explained. Dad looked perplexed. We have enough money. Paisley, have you been sending money to Logan properly? He asked Mom. Mom looked down silently. I was worried that maybe Dad got sick or something and couldn't work, and that's why the money wasn't coming. No, I've been working as usual, Dad assured. Really? That's a relief, I said, somewhat relieved. But then why hadn't any money been sent to me? I was baffled. Cassie, what's going on? Dad pressed Mom. Still refusing to meet our eyes, Mom remained silent. Come on, don't stay silent. Can you explain? Dad insisted. When Dad pressed her, Mom finally said quietly, I haven't sent any money. What? I haven't sent any money to Logan, she admitted. Hearing this, both my dad and I were stunned. What? Why not? Dad asked, incredulous. There are just so many expenses, Mom replied. What kind of expenses? Isn't our home mortgage already paid off? Dad questioned. Realizing she could no longer hide the truth, Mom dropped a bombshell. I've been keeping the money for myself, she confessed. I was dumbstruck. I read online that medical students can earn more than regular students with tutoring jobs, so I thought you'd be okay. I asked you to send me even just a small amount of money, but honestly, I didn't realize you were that strapped for cash, Mom explained. My mom continued in a matter-of-fact tone. There was a call from Logan's workplace recently saying you collapsed from overwork. I was also shocked to see how thin you've become. What? Logan collapsed. What happened? It seemed my dad hadn't been informed about the recent events, so I explained. You collapsed from overwork and malnutrition. Yeah, but it wasn't anything serious, I added. Paisley, why didn't you tell me? My dad asked, clearly upset. I'm sorry. I was afraid he'd find out I wasn't sending the money, my mom said without any sign of guilt. This is outrageous. Logan had to work until he collapsed because he didn't have any money, Dad exclaimed. I didn't mean any harm, my mom defended herself. What have you been using all the money for? Dad confronted her. After a brief pause, she finally spoke up. Well, actually, I have some debts. What? Those were unimaginable words coming from her, who always seemed to perfectly manage the household and even took care of the garden flowers. I thought. The money was used to pay off my debts, Mom continued. Debt? How much do you owe? Dad asked, clearly in disbelief. Mom, still looking down, said quietly, about $100,000. $100,000. I was shocked by the amount. My dad sighed deeply. Why do you have so much debt? I got into gambling, Mom confessed. Basically, I had gotten myself into gambling debts without our knowledge. Why would you even start something like that? Dad asked, holding his head in his hands. About 2 years ago, I started gambling just to kill time. I won some money and it felt really good at first. I only used small amounts, but going to the casino became a habit, and I started betting more and more. I couldn't stop, and it led to that amount. I had never gambled, so I couldn't understand why she couldn't stop. Yes, I kept trying to win back what I lost, but I ended up losing more often than winning. I even dipped into our savings, she admitted. So you've spent more than just the debt amount. Dad yelled at her. How much of our savings did you use? He demanded. About $30,000, Mom confessed. I stopped withdrawing more because I thought you would find out. She looked like she was about to cry. If you'd talked to me about it earlier, it might have been better. With that amount, you could have worked part-time and paid it back little by little, right? Dad said. I absolutely don't want to work part-time, she said emphatically. Get a grip. You racked up the debt yourself. He was visibly angry. I've been a stay-at-home mom for so long. There's no way I can work now. That's why I borrowed money from payday lenders, she confessed. I was stunned by her selfish reasoning. Then the interest piled up and the debt just grew. I got involved with various lenders, and now I can't make payments anywhere. I'm completely overwhelmed. Dad sighed again. Are you still gambling in this situation? Yes, I see no choice, Mom admitted. Then I'll pay off the debt for you, Dad said decisively. Really? Mom stood up from her chair, her face brightening with joy. I knew you would help me. She rushed towards him, looking moved. However, things didn't turn out as favorably for her. But this is your severance. Let's get a divorce, Dad said abruptly. What? I was surprised. Divorce? I will never agree to a divorce, Mom said firmly. Her face turned from joy to terror, as if she had been cast down from heaven to hell. You continued gambling even knowing Logan was struggling, right? You kept borrowing money, endangering the family, Dad pointed out. That's true, but I can't continue as a family with a wife who prioritizes gambling over her son, he insisted. No way, she finally burst into tears. I'll never gamble again. Please forgive me, she pleaded. But he seemed resolute. Your gambling is likely an addiction. You'll need to see a psychiatrist and undergo long-term treatment. It's not uncommon for people to relapse into gambling during treatment. I'm not addicted. I can stop anytime, she protested. No, if this continues, we could all end up destitute. I have to separate, not just for my sake, but to stop burdening Logan any further. I'll stop from tomorrow, she insisted, but she did not seem to grasp the severity of her inability to stop gambling. I was deeply anxious about the amount of debt and my mom's pathological gambling behavior. In exchange for paying your severance, there will be no division of assets, my dad stated. What? I can't agree to those terms. If you don't pay back the debt, they might seize your account. She fell silent. I never imagined coming home after a long time would lead to this situation. I was just unsettled by my parents fighting. No, Dad, don't you think we can hold off on deciding about divorce? Maybe take some time to cool off and think it over, I suggested. I'm sorry, Logan, but that's not possible, he said calmly. I thought he might have decided on divorce in a fit of despair, but that doesn't seem to be the case. Lunch ended in a heavy atmosphere, and I went to my room. I lay down on the sofa, but I could still hear my parents arguing. It wasn't much of an argument. My mom was hysterically screaming, and my dad responded firmly. I got so fed up with college and home that I just went to sleep out of frustration. The next morning, my mom looked awful, probably from crying all night. I had planned to stay at home a bit longer, but the oppressive atmosphere made me decide to leave early. My dad drove me to the airport. Logan, I'm sorry for all the trouble I've caused, he apologized to me. No, it's not your fault, Dad. I'm grateful for the chance to attend medical school, I reassured him. I'll start transferring an allowance directly to your account from now on, so don't worry, he said. Yeah, thanks, Dad. It really helps, I replied. I know things are tough, but take care, he said as he dropped me off. I flew back to New York. The rest of the summer vacation was busy with work, passing by in a flash. Still, I was constantly worried about my parents. A few months later, I heard that my mom finally agreed to the divorce. My dad's steadfastness broke her resistance. As previously discussed, my dad took on her debts, and in return, there was no asset division in their divorce agreement. I have mixed feelings about my parents getting divorced, but it's not all bad news. Now that I'm receiving an allowance from my dad, I've been able to cut back on work and focus more on my studies. I might even get to hang out with friends. I heard from my grandmother on my mother's side that despite the divorce over her gambling, my mom was back at the slot machines every day. She quickly racked up more debt. Her family couldn't afford to cover her debts, so my mom reluctantly started working part-time. She's currently attending therapy to overcome her gambling addiction.
It was just a normal morning during the holiday, with the sun shining bright, hinting at a fun day ahead. I was trying to get my son Aaron ready for his baseball game when everything changed suddenly. As I opened the door, I was stunned to see my husband Mark standing there. The same husband who had disappeared without a trace 3 years ago. "This is our home," he stated firmly, but with a hint of uncertainty in his voice. Before I could fully comprehend his return, another person appeared behind him. Clara, my sister-in-law. Seeing her made my stomach twist with unease. "We're here to take custody of Aaron," Clara declared, her words dripping with false kindness. I had often wondered about this exact situation, remembering how Mark and Clara had vanished around the same time. It seemed too coincidental to be true. But with the chaos of daily life and limited resources, I hadn't been able to investigate further. Lost in these thoughts, I barely noticed Aaron's voice behind me. "Mom, who are you talking to?" My heart sank. There he stood, my brave son, unaware of the storm brewing. Clara turned her predatory smile toward him. "It's nice to meet you, Aaron. I've been wanting to meet you for a long time." Her words churned my stomach. It was the same voice that had charmed everyone, hiding the manipulative and cruel nature I knew too well, the voice I had hoped to never hear again. Confused, Aaron looked at me and then back at them. "Dad, why are you here? And who is she?" He edged closer to me, sensing the tension instinctively. Mark and Clara stood there, looking stunned and caught off guard, clearly not prepared for this confrontation. Before they could gather themselves, Aaron spoke up, his voice filled with anger. "We're leaving, so move." It was then that Mark and Clara noticed something behind me, and their faces turned pale. I couldn't help but let out a bitter laugh. Standing there was my daughter Elise, cradled in Aaron's arms. Mark's eyes widened in shock, darting between Elise and me. "Mark, Clara," I began, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "3 years ago, you disappeared without a word. I was left to pick up the pieces, raise Aaron, and face an unexpected pregnancy." I paused, letting the weight of my words sink in. Clara's eyes narrowed, but I pressed on. "I'm not the same person you abandoned. I fought hard to build a life for my children and me, and I won't let you come back to ruin that." Their faces showed shock, disbelief, and perhaps a hint of guilt. But it was too late for guilt. The wounds they caused were too deep. "Please leave," I said firmly. "You have no right to be here." Mark started to speak, likely with some excuse or plea, but I didn't want to hear it. I closed the door on them, on the past they represented. Turning back to my children, I saw Aaron looking at me with newfound respect, and Elise oblivious to the turmoil. I took a deep breath, steadying my racing heart. This was just the beginning. The battle lines were drawn, and I was prepared to fight for my family's future. The days that followed Mark and Clara's unwelcome visit were filled with a whirlwind of emotions and memories, threatening to overwhelm me like a tidal wave. I found myself going back to the difficult times after Mark disappeared, the nights when I couldn't sleep for worry, and the hours spent wondering what I could have done differently. Aaron struggled the most. Once a happy and outgoing kid, he became quiet and distant, his sparkle fading. I remembered how he'd push away his dinner, beg to skip school events, and give me cold looks instead of his usual warm smiles. It hurt to see him like that, but I didn't know how to help him. While I dwelled on those memories, Elise's innocent laughter filled the house, a sharp contrast to the turmoil inside me. She was my unexpected joy, a beacon of light during Mark's betrayal. Her birth gave me strength and vulnerability all at once. One night, as I tucked Aaron into bed, he looked at me seriously. "Mom, why did Dad leave us? Did we do something wrong?" His question felt like a punch to the gut. "No, honey, you did nothing wrong. Sometimes grown-ups make choices that don't make sense, and it's not because of you." "But why did he come back with Aunt Clara?" His confusion broke my heart. I sighed. trying to find the right words. I don't know why they came back, but I do know that we're a family. You, me, and Elise. We'll face this together. He nodded slowly, his young face full of worries no child should have. I trust you, Mom. I just wish things were like before. I kissed his forehead, whispering, I know, my love, I wish that too. The next day, a call from my lawyer, Mr. Thompson, snapped me out of my thoughts. Lauren, we need to talk about your legal options. Mark and Clara's accusation is unfounded, but we need to prepare a case. I listened intently, my thoughts racing. This was my chance to fight back, to ensure that Mark and Clara couldn't harm us anymore. Let's go for it, I declared firmly. I need to safeguard my children, and I won't allow them to be manipulated by whatever game Mark and Clara are playing. Mr. Thompson's voice was reassuring. You're making the right choice. I'll start getting the paperwork ready. We'll show them that they can't just push you around. As I ended the call, a sense of determination settled over me. Mark and Clara had underestimated me, thinking I'd crumble under their pressure. But they were mistaken. I was stronger now, forged by the challenges I'd faced. I glanced at Elise playing nearby and knew I'd do whatever it took to protect them. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about justice for my children and myself. Mark and Clara had ignited a fierce protective instinct in me, and I was prepared to fight back with all my might. As weeks passed, my resolve solidified like steel. I braced myself for the legal battle ahead, but nothing could have prepared me for the emotional warfare to come. Mark and Clara, like vultures circling, began their campaign to wear me down. One afternoon, picking up Aaron from school, I found them waiting, casting a shadow over the sunny day. Clara's voice dripped with false sweetness as she greeted Aaron. Hi, sweetie, we've missed you so much. Aaron clung to my hand, his body tense. Why are you here? He whispered. Mark stepped forward, feigning concern. We just wanted to see you, son. We're family too, you know. Anger surged within me. You forfeited the right to call yourselves family when you abandoned him, I snapped, pulling Aaron closer. Clara's facade cracked, her eyes narrowing. Lauren, you can't keep him from us. We have rights. Rights? You have no rights here. I shot back, my tone icy. You made your choice 3 years ago. Now you have to live with it. Mark's face contorted with anger. You think you're so perfect, Lauren. You're just a bitter woman who couldn't keep her husband happy. Aaron's grip on my hand tightened, his body trembling. Let's go, Aaron, I said, leading him away, but Clara wasn't finished. You'll regret this, Lauren. We'll get what we want, as we always do. Their threats lingered as we walked away, but I refused to show them any fear. I had to stay strong for Aaron and Elise. That night, their words echoed in my mind as I lay in bed. The thought of losing Aaron to them was unbearable. I couldn't let it happen. I had to be sharper, tougher. The next day, I met with Mr. Thompson, my resolve like armor. I want full custody of Aaron, and I want Mark and Clara to have no visitation rights, I stated firmly. Mr. Thompson nodded. It'll be a tough fight, but I'm confident we can win. You're a great mother, Lauren. The court will recognize that. As the legal preparations progressed, I found an unexpected ally at home, Aaron. One evening, he approached me, his young face serious. Mom, I want to tell the judge I want to stay with you. Dad and Aunt Clara, they're not really my family. Tears filled my eyes as I hugged him tightly. Thank you, Aaron. That means everything to me. The day of the court hearing arrived like a gathering storm. I walked into the courtroom with Aaron beside me, ready to defend our future. During the proceedings, Clara tried to play the loving aunt, but her words rang hollow. Mark acted like a remorseful father, yet his eyes betrayed his true intentions. When Aaron spoke, his voice steady and resolute, the truth shone through. I want to stay with my mom. She's been there for me when no one else was. The judge's decision was like a ray of hope. Full custody granted to me with no visitation rights for Mark and Clara. Leaving the courtroom, Mark seethed with anger, and Clara's eyes glinted with malice. But their reactions didn't matter. Aaron and I had prevailed together. While the victory in court brought a brief sense of peace, it was short-lived. Mark and Clara, wounded and desperate, became more dangerous. They launched a smear campaign, spreading lies and rumors about me in our community. I never expected the psychological battle that ensued. One evening, Aaron returned from school, his eyes filled with tears he refused to shed. "Mom, kids at school are saying you took me from Dad, that you're mean for keeping me away from him." His words shattered me. "Aaron, you know that's not true. Everything I've done is to keep you and Elise safe." He nodded, but doubt lingered in his eyes. "I know, Mom, but it's tough. They just don't understand." I held him close, feeling his trembling frame. "I know it's hard, sweetheart, but we'll endure. We're stronger than their lies." As days passed, the rumors turned uglier. Clara, always sharp-tongued, now wielded her words like a weapon, seeking to dismantle my world. I knew I had to fight back, yet I hesitated to stoop to their level. Then one day, Mark appeared at my workplace, feigning remorse. "Lauren, can't we talk, for Aaron's sake?" His words dripped with venom, his facade transparent. "There's nothing to discuss, Mark. You made your choice. Now you live with it." He gripped my arm tightly. "You're destroying my life. Lauren, you and that kid." I pulled away, my voice steady. "No, Mark, you did that to yourself." As I walked away, his parting threat sent a chill down my spine. "This isn't over, Lauren. I won't give up so easily." The legal win secured custody of Aaron for me, but it didn't put an end to the conflict. Mark and Clara persisted, and I could see how it affected Aaron. He was caught in a battle he couldn't grasp, torn between his biological father and the mother who had never let him down. One evening, Aaron approached me, his face filled with uncertainty. "Mom, what if Dad changes? What if he wants to be a real dad?" His words struck a chord. "Aaron, I understand he's your father, and it's natural to hope for that. But we must see people for who they are, not who we wish them to be." There was a moment of silence before Aaron looked up at me, his eyes clear. "I understand. I just wish things were different." I embraced him, murmuring, "I wish the same, Aaron. I truly do." Amidst the ongoing battle, my focus remained on Aaron and Elise. They were my pillars, the reason I fought relentlessly. And I'd do anything to shield them, to give them a life free from the shadows cast by Mark and Clara's deceit. Their relentless campaign turned darker, veering into harassment. They seemed omnipresent, at my workplace, near Aaron's school, always lingering, always observing. It became a psychological siege, its weight bearing down on me daily. Yet, I refused to be cowed. It was time to retaliate, to show them they couldn't disrupt our lives without repercussions. I arranged a meeting with Mr. Thompson, my determination unwavering. "Mr. Thompson, it's time for more decisive legal action. I want to pursue a restraining order against Mark and Clara, and I want to sue them for harassment and defamation," I asserted. Mr. Thompson agreed wholeheartedly. "I believe that's a prudent step, Lauren. Their behavior is intolerable, and they must face the legal consequences." The legal battles were arduous, but I remained steadfast. In court, Mark portrayed himself as the victim, a man unfairly treated by his vengeful ex-wife. Clara, ever the performer, shed tears over being deprived of a role in her nephew's life. However, their theatrics couldn't obscure the truth. The judge saw through their charade and granted the restraining order. Furthermore, they were instructed to compensate for the harm caused by their defamatory actions. Leaving the courtroom, Mark seethed with anger, while Clara's eyes smoldered with unspoken threats. Yet, this time, I refused to be intimidated. The law was on my side. Their defeat in court failed to extinguish their vendetta. If anything, it seemed to stoke their malice further. One day, I received a chilling call from Mark. "You think you've won, Lauren? You think you can ruin my life and walk away? I'll ensure you regret this," he spat over the phone. I gritted my teeth, suppressing the fear his words ignited. "You brought this upon yourself, Mark. I'm merely safeguarding my family." "You haven't seen the end of me, Lauren. This isn't finished," he snarled before disconnecting. His threat lingered in the air like poison, but I refused to let it weaken me. Aaron and Elise were my top priority. They were my world, and I'd do whatever it took to shield them from Mark and Clara's cruelty. However, as days turned into weeks, the constant strain started to wear me down. The perpetual watchfulness, the dread of what Mark might do next, the weight of single motherhood, it consumed me entirely. One evening, as I tucked Elise into bed, Aaron approached me, his expression serious. "Mom, are we going to be okay?" Dad sounded really angry on the phone. I enveloped him in a hug, my heart breaking for the burden he carried. "We'll be okay, Aaron. I won't let anything happen to us, I promise." Yet even as I uttered those words, I knew the battle was far from over. Mark and Clara loomed like a looming storm, and I had to be prepared for whatever they threw our way. The weeks post-court ruling were fraught with tension and vigilance. Mark and Clara, constrained by the restraining order, retreated into the shadows, their silence more unsettling than their threats. I sensed this lull was just the calm before another storm. Then it struck. Clara, in a desperate move, staged a public spectacle. While I was grocery shopping, she emerged out of nowhere, hurling accusations. "You're a monster, Lauren. You've torn our family apart." Clara's cries drew the attention of bystanders. I stood firm, my voice unwavering. "Clara, you need to leave. You're violating the restraining order." Enraged, she spat back. "I don't care. The world needs to see your true colors." But her theatrics backfired. The store manager, recognizing the disruption, called the police. As they escorted a hysterical Clara away, her facade of the wronged aunt crumbled. This public meltdown proved to be the tipping point. The police charged Clara with violating the restraining order and causing a public disturbance. Mark, too, faced repercussions. His involvement in the harassment and defamation, now laid bare, led to his arrest. As I'd witnessed their apprehension, a twinge of pity stirred within me. They had plummeted into their own abyss, a pit of lies and animosity they had dug themselves. Yet this feeling was swiftly eclipsed by a sense of justice. They were finally being held accountable for their actions. In the aftermath, the community's perception shifted. The truth about Mark and Clara's deceit and manipulation came to light. Those who had once whispered behind my back now extended their apologies and support. Aaron, witnessing his father and aunt's downfall, grappled with conflicting emotions. "Mom, is it wrong to feel relieved about Dad and Aunt Clara getting arrested?" I squeezed his hand, empathizing with his inner turmoil. "It's okay to feel relieved, Aaron. They caused us a lot of pain. It's natural to seek justice." The battle that had consumed us for months appeared to be at an end. Mark and Clara, once formidable adversaries, were now diminished. Their ability to harm us had been stripped away. As I tucked Aaron and Elise into bed that night, a sense of tranquility settled over me. We had weathered the storm and emerged triumphant. Our future lay before us, bright and full of promise. Though life had thrust us into turbulent waters, we had learned to navigate the tempest. Now it was time to relish the calm, to embrace the fresh beginning that awaited us.